Hello, everybody. Welcome to day two of our conference. Yesterday, we explored many different themes around pre-service education. We started yesterday with the keynote by Gitanjali ma'am, who took us through who a teacher needs to be and how we need to innovate to empower and lead. We explored what the challenges and hopes for a pre-service education are through a panel discussion. We looked at a few successful case studies from across the globe. Finally, we launched a pre-service collective, which was also an invitation for any interested organizations to come together and even work with us and also launch the white paper. We'll explore a wide variety of topics today relevant for in-service educators. With me, we have Geetika, who is the Associate Director at SEF, who will take us through the day two sessions and the other details for the day. Geetika, welcome you to speak.
Thank you, Ellie. So today, as Elizabeth told you, is a day for in-service teacher profession development and educators. Today, we will start with a keynote address from Subir sir, where we will focus on what is the current reality of teacher profession development and what is the vision we are holding for teacher profession development. And we would love to hear your thoughts also on the chat. Throughout the day, there will be different innovations we will be talking about, how AI is playing a huge role in teacher profession development, how we need to focus on teacher well-being as well when we think of teacher profession development. We will also hear from Taylor the global perspectives on teacher profession development, as well as we will look at certain case studies of the work that has gone in teacher professional development and hear about the training and adult learning from the perspective of neuroscience from Trinivas. So it's going to be a wonderful day full of innovations in teacher profession development, and we are excited to hear your thoughts on the chat as well. Yeah, and I would like to start the day today by welcoming Subir Shukla. Subir Shukla sir has been in the education sector from the last 30 plus years in the field of education. He has served as former educational quality advisor to the Ministry of Human Resource and Development, Government of India. He has also played a pivotal role in developing the quality framework for the implementation of right to education as well as Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. Currently, Subir is holding the position of principal coordinator at the Ignis Group. In his role, he is dedicated to bring about large-scale systemic changes in education. He has provided advisory services to state and national governments in Asia, and his focus is on enhancing the quality of both governmental and non governmental organization education programs. We are honored and grateful for Subir to address the audience of where India is in this journey of teacher professional development and where India needs to go moving forward.
So should I begin then?
Yes, please, Subir sir.
All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Geetika, Elizabeth, and everyone else who's been involved in this, and all of you who have joined us here. Today, we'll just take a bird's eye view of what is currently happening in in-service training and where we could be headed, or where we ought to be headed rather. Uh, we do quite a lot of in-service training. Anywhere between 18 to 43 million days of in-service training have been done at different points of time in different years, depending on what is happening. There is now, of course, an emphasis on everyone completing 50 hours of in-service training. And post-COVID, people have learned a lot about how to use technology, focused on socio-emotional learning. Now FLN is being emphasized. Teacher well-being is talked about. But interestingly, if you come across teachers, I do not see too many teachers who are really happy about what is going on in teacher training. And in fact, most people say that we invest so much, but our returns are really poor. And it's important to examine what is not going very well. As you know, in the field, when you go to visit training program, they are kind of discrete events. They are not necessarily connected with what is happening in other parts. If assessment is being done in a state, it is not necessary the training is related to that. The focus is somehow on completing the number of hours, number of days, rather than what will be different as a result of training. So it's a tick marking activity. Very often we see if expenditure has taken place and not whether the quality of training was really good. People complain of having to participate in the same kind of training again and again. Uh, there's not much difference between training of new or experienced teachers. Sometimes, a state that I went to, they said that they attended 3 different FLN trainings and were wondering which one they actually had to implement. Recently, 1 or 2 states have taken the step of now compelling everyone to have a common streamlined calendar so that overlaps, contradictions are reduced. What's important to note is that why so much training is being done is also because uh, the way Samagra Shiksha is structured, in order to get management funds, which runs your SPO, State Project Office, which will be 8% of the overall expenditure on quality. You need to spend a lot of money on the quality aspect, and training is the part where you can spend much of it. As a result, what happens is that whether it is needed or not, all states feel they're bound to conduct a lot of training, otherwise they cannot get funds for other things. Again, you do not see too many states. Some NGOs do it, but you do not see state governments actually assessing the result of what there are in. Of course, now diets are required to do follow-up visits, but I haven't yet come across studies which say that what they have found can be connected with or is connected with that in any way what is done in-service teacher training. Uh, a very big reason why in-service training doesn't work as well is that it doesn't always connect with what teachers actually face. Just to give you one example, 70% teachers teach more than one grade at one time. But almost all training assumes that teachers will teach one grade at one time. Earlier, till recently, we did not take multilingual situation into account. Right now, what we are not taking into account is that teaching learning time is very less due to climate change and other issues too. And of course, there's a huge difference between, say, a remote village in a tribal area and a city school in a slum area. But the remedy or the advocated practice, such as pedagogy, is exactly the same everywhere. It's just not going to work. And the focus is not to deliver result, but just to follow orders of implementing things. In some states, teachers are even told what to teach in which day, irrespective of where they are. So right now, this is my reading. I worked in a large number of states in the last year or so, and I would say that the system is getting overheated. It's trying to do too much in too little time. Now, when you look at how training is conceived, there are limitations there too. For example, teachers' training needs are not understood simply by asking teachers what they need. To understand training needs, you have to clearly articulate what is it that teachers are expected to be able to do, what do they currently do, what is the gap between the two, and that gap is the need. And then, of course, if you articulate it like that, you can see if it is happening or not. There are issues of training design. It's not organically designed. For example, in many training programs that I have seen, different sessions are taken by different resource persons. They do their session and they leave, and there is not necessarily a continuity across sessions. There are problems with the written content, which is called modules in our case. I don't come across many teachers who read a module from end to end. If you go through it, you will see that teachers have been seeing those kind of modules for more than 25 years. And they have come across tens of thousands of pages of that, and they know how much of it can be delivered or not. Much of training is pretty didactic one way. Again, recently in a state that I visited, I saw that simply a lecture was being given by a diet faculty member, even on something like experiential learning, with very little understanding of how teachers learn. So just as there is a way in which children learn, there's a way in which teachers learn. There's a sequence in which they learn. There's a sequence in which they change, and you do not come across many trainers who can do what they're asking teachers to do. We have a lot of emphasis on technology, But the thing that technology does is that, of course, for older teachers, it is difficult for them to struggle with. For younger teachers, yes, they can use it better. But what technology is currently doing is that it is imitating the aspect of education which doesn't work very well in face-to-face or in-person situations. So in-person pedagogy, what is considered traditional or wrong, not wrong, but not most appropriate for the present times, is the understanding that the source of knowledge lies in the person providing it rather than in the participant's act of engaging with it and sharing in the process of developing his or her own understanding. What technology does is typically that it's like talking head, like I'm doing right now, perhaps. One person comes and speaks. So if technology simply reproduces that which happens in face-to-face situations and is not successful, it's not going to be successful on a screen either. I'm not sure if you know, but teachers who participate in Diksha trainings, especially where it is compulsory, have found that you can actually simply click without looking at anything, and you can. There are teachers who claim they can do a course in like 30 seconds. When we do in-person training, somehow logistics become like really critical. The quality of the venue, the food, stationery, whether there's a board or not, all of those things become really important. And later when you talk to teachers, they talk more about those aspects than what happened in the training. All of this, there's a difference between, say, training in army or training of other places and training of a teacher. A teacher's job is to assess the situation and respond accordingly. We want our children to think for themselves. We want our teachers to think for themselves. But what happens is that they are actually in a command and control system. The expectation from them is that they will simply follow orders. So as a result, training cannot be successful because there's a contradiction in the actual situation and what training advocates. In all this, there's, for some reason, we do not have a well-documented shared understanding of how teachers develop over a long term. Now, the NPS is now trying to begin that, but though quite a lot of work has been done, it is not commonly available. There's a huge range of areas on which a lot of development and understanding is required. So it's important, because training is becoming a kind of activity which is being done for the sake of being done almost. And the solution for everything is training. For example, recently when the results of National Achievement Survey, NAS, were shared, if children perform poorly in mathematics in, let's say, grade 3, their response is, let's do more training. But we do not know if this performance is because the textbooks didn't reach in time, the pedagogy is not appropriate, concrete materials are not utilized, local examples are not given, the time kept for mathematics is not sufficient. So as training is becoming this common solution to every problem. We now need to therefore re-examine what exactly in-service training is for. What does it mean? So first, that it's a responsive measure. If pre-service training is high quality and very good, should a teacher need further in-service training? Only if something has changed or if something is not being achieved. So there has to be one of these sources for you to decide further training is required. And you need to articulate what those changes are or what those shortfalls are, and training must specifically address those. Second, in-service training is required because a person who is a novice, even if highly trained, as they experience, they need to go to a next level and a next level, and there has to be a kind of professional development and progression from novice to expert over the career of a teacher. Not that you keep doing the same kind of thing again and again over a period of time. And thirdly, it's important to realize that in most cases, we are not able to conduct in-service training during vacations or breaks. That used to be done earlier, but it's not as common now. In some places it might be, but it's not very common. So what we are doing is that we are actually taking the teacher out from the actual teaching. with the intention that this will provide that input which will improve the teaching once the teacher returns. Does it happen? We don't know. So let me first talk a bit about the first part. What are the changes which should determine or affect what we do in in-service training? A big shift came about from right to education. Education was always seen as a privilege, but now it's a right. There's a big difference. You're a duty bearer, so teacher's role is shifted. Right to education defines quality as comprising three elements. What is the nature of processes? Like now we talk about experiential learning. What is the nature of relationships? It's a two-way process between teachers and children, not a hierarchical one. And a focus on higher order learning, not just the basics. We now have NEP, NPST, SCORF, all of these things, experiential learning, performance indicators. I won't take your time on this, but there's a lot of new things now being put into the system. And of course, technology is now all pervasive. So we have a lot of new expectations, new thrust areas, and also a stated intent that we will develop autonomous learners who are well-rounded. This is very different from learners who have learned the subject, respect elders, and follow instructions. Now, in all of this, we also have a situation where the ground reality is shifting dramatically. So as we increase enrollment, children who traditionally never used to attend school started attending school. So working children, children with disabilities, girls from various communities, and so on, were now in school, and diversity increased dramatically, but our pedagogical response did not take that into account sufficiently. There's rapid urbanization happening. So in city schools in Delhi, you will have Punjabi and Odia next to each other. How do you teach in that situation? Technology is widespread, but I think everybody now recognizes that technology's effects are also that it tends to distract. Recently, we did a survey of teachers in order to create an online program, and we found that it is very difficult for teachers to stick to any on-screen thing for more than 3 minutes at a time. And this is what Diksha people have also told us, that they went through millions or billions of the records, and this is what they found. And of course, now as social media is spreading, somehow it's much easier for people to disagree with each other than to find commonalities. So we are now in a situation where things are changing on the ground. So when we talk of in-service training, it is not just merely about producing a few classroom skills. It is about implementing a changed, improved version of education and the education system, which NEP dreams of, or all of us want to see. So it has to be seen from a larger perspective. It is not about that limited part of 3 days, a little bit of training. It has to be seen over a longer period of time as a progression, as a transformative process. Training is not only about just change, but profound change that must happen in a teacher. The person has to become different from inside. And so the question to be asked is, what exactly are the shifts to be made? And I'll talk about this in a while. But one thing that I would like to share with everyone is that from a teacher's perspective, there are 4 questions that they want answers to in every workshop, any meeting, any program that they attend, which is, tell me what exactly I have to do. It has to be done in such a manner that they can visualize what is to be done. Tell me why I have to do it. They have to have a rationale. Otherwise, they're doing okay. They don't need to change. Then they need to know, how do I do it in my situation? So any training will talk about things in a generic manner, but every teacher's situation is different. So how do they apply that in their own context? And lastly, how do I know I'm doing it right? So the first thing that I think we should take into account is, do we answer these questions or not? All of this has to be informed by a certain vision, and that would be our starting point of where we want to go. So there are 3 major steps that I suggest all of us involved in in service training to consider. First, I know this is going to sound a little retrograde, but we need to look at the basics again. So I would start with this. To envision your teacher, you need to envision your student. If you put NCF, NEP, or any other policy expectation or your own expectations, you will find that you have a certain statement that you will come out with. I've given you an example of one organization from one place. So this group says our learner would be an autonomous learner, one who can ask questions, plan, and engage, use her own mind for herself, take decisions, analyze, be critics, set benchmarks, take pride in their efforts, be sensitive to others, collaborate, and so on. Now, suppose you want to create a student or develop a student of this kind. What must happen in the class, and what exactly would the teacher be like? What are the qualities needed? Very often what happens is we start from the other end. This is my understanding of FLN, therefore teacher must do this. But how about starting from the end of the student and then working backwards? Everybody talks of 21st century skills, critical thinking, social emotional health, but to convert that into classroom processes and then say what is needed in the teacher for this to happen, how will we develop that, and how will we know that it is happening? And that's only one part of it. You cannot change only the teacher in the classroom without working on the rest of the system. So what exactly will the trainer be able to do? How will we develop that trainer? What about the institutions, BRCs, diets, departments? If they continue to be the same old way, irrespective of your efforts on the ground, the same result will accrue over and over again. So the first thing I would do is to reconceptualize the inputs that we need to share with teachers, starting from the students and the context and working backwards and having a framework for all levels. Secondly, yes, we have had a lot of failures, but we have also learned a lot of things. It would be a pity if we are not able to make use of that. So teachers are a manifestation of the education system. So for example, if they have received hierarchical behavior from their officials, that is what they will practice in the class, irrespective of the training you do. So it's important to realize what is behind what they do. And then think of how teachers change. Some things that we have learned. One of them is that teachers do not change unless they experience the different way in which they are expected to work. If somebody has never participated in an activity, never used materials on their own hands, never had a facilitator who trusted that they would learn, never had a trainer who cared for them, they are not going to be able to do that for their children. So they need to experience it. But they also need to reflect on it. They need to apply it. It needs to be consolidated. So this experience, reflection, application, and consolidation, ERAC, is the methodology by which we have repeatedly found that teachers change. Also, and this is slightly technical but problematic that it doesn't get done commonly, in any training program, we are trying to communicate or to develop skills or information or concepts or attitudes. Each of these is a different category of objective. You cannot learn skills the same way you acquire information or the same way you develop concepts. So do we have methods which apply to each of these? All of this has been understood quite well. If there's scope later, we will talk about it. Interestingly, in recent research, we found that wherever officials and trainers have made an effort to start the process by simply listening to teachers, the results have been much better. Very often, especially when it comes to changing attitudes towards children, for example, can poor children also learn well? That's an attitudinal issue. It's difficult to bring about change if you do not feel emotionally safe. So the emotional environment of an in-service training program really matters a lot more. Teachers don't need prescriptions, they need principles. So do not say that when introducing this topic, refer to this previous lesson in this particular way. Instead, say that connect with children's previous knowledge and let teachers have 5-7 ways. They can choose the way in which they do it. We found modules where teachers could add to that. Like, for example, when teaching mathematics using materials, the materials from my environment that I can use are, and teachers fill it up. And then this is the activity I will do with this is, and during the training, when they fill that material, they personalize it. And the chances of that material seeing uptake in the class is much more than if the whole thing is given as is. This has been tried in Karnataka in a module called Sabal in UP, in Kerala under the name of My Own Teaching Manual, so on. And lastly, teachers change when they experience success in the class. If they remain unsuccessful, they don't. So idea is break down your expectation into small bits, enable them to succeed every month, and you will then see change. For all trainers out there, it's important to know that there's a sequence in which teachers change. For example, government teachers go through a sequence of being in a state of disinterest when they come into training. They are under orders to attend, not out of interest. If you do things well, they might first disagree with you, then they will go into a stage of doubt, they will start supporting. In the end, they accept and they are empowered to do it. They learn to do oral activities before they learn to do activities which require reading and writing, and only then they learn how to do activities which require the use of TLM. Certain attitudes change before other attitudes. So it's important to know that whatever you're trying to develop, what is the sequence to getting there? A big gap remains in developing teacher educators. They need to participate in high quality training themselves first, and then break it down into nuts and bolts, and then get the chance to practice small parts of it, like a 5-minute session, a 10-minute session, and slowly become a high quality trainer or a teacher educator. So if your training of teachers is 5 days, the trainers need to be trained about 15 days. Most often it is the other way around. I already mentioned this, you can't change at the level of school alone. You need to change at multiple levels. Something like this was tried in 8,500 schools in UP. It was very interesting. It was agreed with the state what specific learning outcome will change. For example, one outcome was that in class 3, children will be able to read an age-appropriate text and answer questions that begin with why, how, and if. Then it was worked out what teacher must do for this to happen. How will it be verified, observed, and measured? So performance indicators were made, which could allow us to do that. But then for that to happen, what would CRCs, BRCs, and diets do? And performance indicators were similarly made for each of them. Now, if you want children to improve 5%, teachers have to improve some 20%, CRCs and BRCs some 40%, and diets by like 60% to see that 5% improvement at the grassroots level. If you can't deliver at the top, you're not going to see change at the bottom. So therefore, setting targets and improvements is important. And lastly, if you have this kind of data about who's able to do what, you can provide the input that is needed at the time it is needed. So like in a drip irrigation manner, and not like in a flood manner that we currently do. So going forward, what should we look forward to? The world is going to continue to change. We are currently still kind of following a 19th century approach to a 21st century issue. Diversity is going to increase. Equity will become even more important. We will need multiple context customized inputs. We will have to have participants as partners in co-creating their own development. Pedagogy shifting. It's not only AI, but many other aspects. For example, with climate change, what will happen is that school cannot be seen as happening on a continuous basis as it has been till now. So school is no more a place, but a state of learning, whether at home or outside. So how do you enable pedagogy in that situation? What is knowledge is not the same as it was earlier. Instead of command and control, we will have to move towards sharing a vision, agreeing on standards, and then encouraging teachers to work on their own towards those with our support instead of under our instructions. For any work to happen on scale, you will need to codify it, but can it be contextualizable? My reading is that supportive supervision, the work expected from CRCs, BRCs, is the most critical. So in any input, suppose it's online or in person, if I do a workshop, the real issue is when the teacher goes back to the class, do they receive the support that they need at that time? If they don't, they give up. That's where making training actually succeed happens. We've learned this very bitter lesson that competence is different from performance, which is different from effectiveness. Competence is what you can do, you have the ability to do. Performance is what you actually do, and that's what we want to see. But two teachers may be performing well, but one will get results. He's effective. So what happens is that if two teachers are competent, but one does not have the minimum enabling conditions, there's not enough space, not enough materials, not enough time, this person's competence will not be converted into performance. If two teachers are performing, but one gets academic support and the other doesn't, that teacher's work will not lead to that degree of improvement in learning. So in service, and this is the point I want to make, in service is the cycle entirely from competence to enabling conditions to performance to supportive conditions to effectiveness. This includes everything from in-person workshops, online workshop, supportive supervision, supply of materials, performance indicators, self-assessment by teachers, and a range of things. Lastly, for those working, it's important to take an ecosystem view. There is a number of components that are inside the classroom, like curriculum, pedagogy, textbooks, assessment, school management, community involvement. All of these have to align with each other. Sometimes the textbook goes in one direction, pedagogy in another direction, assessment in yet another direction. Similarly, in-system components such as teacher recruitment, teacher development, administration, research, performance assessment, policy, they too may not be synced with each other or also with the in-class. So this is our role to ensure that alignment exists. One thing I would suggest is just a simple statement really, but technology will work very well if it stops trying to give answers. Instead, it should share questions and let people work on the answers. It will be far more empowering. Currently, we find that so many CSOs are in the field doing similar work or sometimes the same work, getting in each other's way, or sometimes negating each other's inputs. And I think ultimately we end up damaging our own objectives. So it's really important to synergize and come together. But to come together, what will help is not to say that this is your territory or this is your team, but to have a common vision of the kind of student, the kind of teacher, the kind of system we want to develop, and then share what strengths we bring and how can we collaborate. You cannot collaborate unless you have a common agreed vision. And I would say that educating donors is one of the key requirements. Very often, a lot of things are done simply because donors insist on it. But I think now donors are kind of waking up to the fact that their intentions might be damaging their own objectives. So these three things put together will enable all CSOs also to make a joint impact. And lastly, everybody should keep asking themselves this question that it's not only how teachers learn, but also how education systems learn. And they too learn from experience, reflection, application, and consolidation as they come in contact with all of us. Work cultures evolve, but we have to be aware of this, capture it, enable it to happen in a deliberate way. Lastly, my request to everyone is that please make new mistakes. A very large number of mistakes have already been made. If you're not learning from it, you're not using your time well. So to end this, I want to suggest 2-3 concrete things to each group who might be out there. If you're a teacher, please ask yourself this: What do my students know from outside the class that I can make use of in the class? So, for example, if you're a secondary teacher in UP, your students may know how sugarcane juice is converted into jaggery. There's a lot of physics, heat there, If you're in a tribal area, your children know a lot about trees, plants, animals. How will you make use of that? One thing that doesn't cost anything is simply to smile a lot more. Try that out. Uh, do a whole day of smiling 10% more and see if it has any impact. We ask a lot of questions in the class. What if after asking the question, I just wait for 10 seconds and give children more time to think? Will that change things? As a teacher, we do not have to wait for anybody to tell us anything. There are 100 ordinary things we can do which cost nothing except a little bit of thought. If you're a teacher trainer, try this, that don't start a workshop by trying to tell teachers anything. Ask an interesting open-ended question. What has been a moving moment for you? What kind of teacher would you have liked to be? What are the difficulties we face? How can training support you? If you're a trainer, I would also urge that before you do a session on experiential training, if you haven't yet done it, please go to the class and try for 4 or 5 days to make that happen in the class. Whatever it is you're communicating, please do it yourself till you are absolutely confident you could do it anywhere. And that will tell you a lot about what to do in your training. I always wonder why teachers should listen to us at all, especially when many things we want to say are already known to them or can be accessed. So it's important as a trainer to know what you bring to the table that is not already there. If you're an organization, you're a diet or a CSO, ask yourself, what is your vision for student, for teacher, for school, for support institutions like CRCs, BRCs, diets, and the system itself? There are 1,000 things that need to be done, but where do we start? I would say start with the easiest. Don't start with the most important. Sometimes that's most difficult. You do many things. For example, you may visit schools, you may hold meetings. Do you have performance indicators for what it means to do it well? Assess yourself first before you interact with teachers. You'll find that things change. Your objective is not to be one who keeps providing inputs, but to reach a point where teachers actually want to have inputs from you, not participate in your training just because they are under orders to. What will take you to get there? If you are a government organization or if you're a government looking to improve performance, it really makes a difference. Simply ask teachers, what is it that you want to improve and how can we support you? And then do that. Don't run a program. Run a program of asking teachers, responding to what they have said, doing it. Once you have done that, then it gives you the moral authority to say, this is what you wanted, this is what we have done. What are you now doing? That it changes the relationship completely. It's very important to set benchmarks, performance indicators, which are absolutely clear, and impartially appreciate anyone who attains them. Currently, the system is in a state of despondence, mainly because people feel that anyone who flatters officials is the one who gains their attention, not somebody who performs well. This is something which, especially those in decision-making positions, can actually quite easily implement. This is one of those changes that starts from the top. This is not one of those bottom-up changes. And lastly, all of us are involved in assessment across states, districts, blocks. Don't assess just in an overall average manner. Once you have that data, any entity where the lowest 25%, if you take their average, if it is performing higher than others, it doesn't mean that they're performing well, but rank them by that. Once the stakeholders get the message that the focus is on those who fall behind and we are ranked according to them rather than those who top, you'll find that there's a very big shift in the system as a whole. So thank you so much. I look forward to your questions. Here's my email ID. If we can't talk today, whenever you can, please send me a mail. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Subir. I think it's very hard for me to say what every line that you said is a mark on my brain, something that I will go forward and apply in when I work with governments moving forward. And I strongly agree when you said that it's those 3 days are not about 3 days of in-service training. It's about changing the perspective on education, and it's about the transformative journey. So thank you so much for giving your time today. And yeah.
Okay. So are there any questions? I see
Yeah, there
one
is
in
a
the
question that is coming on the chat. Would you like me to share uh, that question? Um, so
yeah,
the
yeah.
question is something that you covered in the last slide as well. So when we think about teacher professional development programs, there is a lot of top to down approach, right? The decisions are made at the top level, and which affects the implementation at the ground, which also affects the motivation of teachers of implementing these policies at the ground. So what are some ways, small actions that we can do with people who are working in the teacher profession development space to increase the motivation of teachers and improve implementation?
So to tell you the truth, if I were a teacher, there's a lot of material I would definitely not make use of.
Yeah.
The reason is that uh, it is time consuming either to make or it is clumsy to use. Let me give one example.
Yeah.
Uh, Everybody makes materials for teaching units, tens, and hundreds. And what they do is they make bundles of sticks of 10 each. It's a lot of work to make those bundles, okay? But even using in the class, I would do something simple like this. I would make children stand and I would say, okay, here are two kids. When one kid raises hand, each finger is equal to 10.
Yeah.
How much is this? And the other kid raises hand, each is equal to 1. How much is this? This is 23. Now, this is so much faster and easier. Hmm. I'll take any ordinary object like a pen and I will say that, can you guess how many pen lengths my blackboard is? And I'll have a lot of suspense around it and then actually measure. So
Yeah.
I don't need a separate material. The point I'm making is the purpose of TLM is not TLM, but to make teachers' work easier and effective. If we ask teachers to say painfully make some card which will be used only once, it is not low cost. It is very high cost in terms of teachers' time. So mostly when teachers don't use materials, it is because the material is bunk. So
Yeah.
we need to look at the materials more carefully. Make teachers' life easier, they'll make use your material.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Thank you for sharing that. I strongly agree that we need to keep the time and energy lens of teachers when we are thinking of interventions, when we are thinking of TLMs or anything around it. Yeah, strongly agree. Thank you, Subir, for sharing. We would also collate all the questions and share with you. Thank you so much for your time and really grateful.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There are a lot of questions in the chat. You can send them to me later,
Yes.
and I'll
Yeah.
respond. And then we can wind up now and move on to the other presentations.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
your time
you.
today.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
I welcome Ellie to welcome our next guest.
Sorry, my mic is muted. Yeah. Thank you so much, Subir sir. It was really nice hearing from you. We have another amazing speaker here. So we just heard about Indian perspective, right? Now we're going to hear from a global perspective from Taylor here. I'm very, very happy to welcome you, Taylor, to this space. Taylor is an educator and has been working towards bringing high quality education to children for more than 18 years. He started his teaching journey in 2006 in New York City with Teach for America. After finishing his 2 year commitment, he was hooked and wanted to stay in the classroom. So he became a history teacher for more than 8 years, where he spent a lot of his time deepening the understanding of what an excellent education means. He is also the co-founder of a charter high school in Brooklyn, New York, one of New York City's poorest neighborhoods. His goal was to help students make choices about their future. Currently, he is the director at the Global Institute at Teach for All, where he's working towards collective leadership. So today we're going to hear from Taylor about a lot of like global perspective, what's happening across the globe, right? So very, very excited to hear from you, Taylor. Over to you.
Hello. Thank you so much for that. It's so good to be here. My morning, your evening. And I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. Let me see if I can get this right. Sharing screen. Thank you for your patience. Okay, let's see. Oh, the anticipation. Here we go. Okay. Is that working?
Yes, it's adding.
Awesome. Technology, this new platform, it's got me. Okay. Friends, it's really good to be here. I'm going to talk today a little bit about teacher preparation and really kind of leaning into this idea of how do we grow students as leaders and how do we train teachers to do that. And we're just going to skim the surface. I'm not going to go or kind of have anything that's like going to put you onto this new path. I don't think so. But I think I'm going to be able to share a couple of bets that I'm having around teacher preparation as a way to grow students as leaders. Before I do this, you might be just wondering, and you got a little intro here from Ellie. Thank you so much. It was way too kind. But might be thinking about, who is this guy? And before I kick off on anything like this, I think it's important to share a little bit about myself so you know where it is I'm coming from. So yes, my name is Taylor Delhagen. I'm a proud 2006 Teach for America Corps member. Taught in Brooklyn for, like Ellie said, for what I thought was going to be 2 short years, but ended up being something like a decade and a half. And like I was just introed, while I was in Brooklyn, I had the privilege of working with some amazing teams of teachers, parents, students, and community members to open up 2 public charter schools there. And then eventually ended up teaching at what's called the Relay Graduate School of Education, teaching teachers. And I had the privilege of teaching this niche of history teachers in particular. And then moved on to Western North Carolina, where I live now, finished up my doctorate, and that was focused in part on teacher preparation. And now I work with the amazing team at Teach for All with a new adventure called the Global Institute for Shaping a Better Future. I'm the director for faculty support there. I am, more than anything, the very proud husband of another Teach for America Corps member who's an amazing educator herself. And we now have 2 boys, Rumi and Rivers, who will be educators at some point as well. So now that that intro is behind us, I want to kick off with a light question. Question is, why do schools exist? What is the purpose of school? And notice, I did not ask why should schools exist. I'm asking, why do they exist? What is the purpose of school? So if you could take to the chat, I'd love to see some of your answers pop in there. I'll give you a second to kind of marinate on that question. Practicing my think time, my wait time here. Oh, interesting.
A lot of things are coming up on chat.
Yeah.
You can see that. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah. These are all so good. These are so idealistic. I love it. So I'm seeing things like making better citizens, or to educate citizens, to empower institutions of learning. I love all of this. And this is way more optimistic than I have ever been about school. And I think this is about why schools should exist. And I am oriented in that direction as well. Unfortunately, when I stop and I think about why schools exist, I usually hear, our society say things along the lines of, because I did, because that's what society expects you to do, something around order, routines. And then I also hear this kind of frustration with that question. It's like, why are you asking these types of questions anyhow? Now, what I would love to be true is this idea of to make students of the future ready, right? I see that in there. Schools that exist to the shelter and thinking about things like enlightenment. I would love that to be true. But when I go into schools around the world in a lot of different contexts, I do see aspects of that. But more often than not, I'm seeing kids sitting in rows. I'm seeing kids asked to be quiet. I'm seeing kind of the stifling of creativity rather than the unleashing of it. So it makes me think about this. It makes me think that maybe, possibly, we've gotten good at a bad model, right? There's these extraordinary challenges facing our planet, and they require unprecedented leadership, collaboration, creativity. But unfortunately, our paradigm of schooling is falling pretty short in meeting this fraught moment, right? Around the world, schooling is stuck in this kind of industrial paradigm where teachers are taught to demand compliance. Students are only as successful to the degree that they can showcase that obedience, usually with assessments and tests. Schools are left pandering superficial content that lacks cultural responsiveness, deeper learning. And the system ignores the advances in all the learning sciences that we now know to be true, right? And from the earliest moments in my teaching career, I've felt a wee bit unsettled with this dominant paradigm of schooling, right? The confluence of narrowly defined outcomes, the inequitable power structures result in uncomfortable reality that schools are not adequately taking care of our kids, especially those in the most marginalized communities. And what I've come to see as a response to this is like these three orientations to teacher preparation, right? The first orientation that I've been thinking about, right, is this idea that we can train teachers towards an equal inputs paradigm, right? This is the idea that if teachers give students the same stuff, then our kids are going to be fine, right? Second orientation here in the center of your screen is the teaching as equal outputs orientation. This is the orientation that dominates many of the schools that I get to walk into today, right? This is the stuff that movies are made out of, like the good old pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And in this orientation, success is about closing the achievement gaps and providing the kids that come from any background, no matter their caste or their class, it's proving that they can achieve at high levels, right? I was brought up in that orientation to teacher preparation, this equal outputs orientation. But I think there's another one. Enter orientation number 3 on the right-hand side of your screen here. This is the teacher preparation as student leadership. And this orientation begs the question, what if the purpose of education went beyond the normal paradigm of today and focused on growing students as leaders of a better future for themselves, their communities, for all of us? What would teaching, what would learning look, sound, and feel like? So if we have those 3 orientations and we want to, at some point, kind of lean towards that third one, that orientation towards student leadership, what do we do about teacher prep? Now, the short answer here is going to be pretty disappointing because I really don't know. And I kind of distrust anyone who says that they have it all figured out, right? But right now, in this moment, I have these 3 bets that I'm willing to make that might orient teacher prep towards that third orientation, that one focused on developing student leadership, right? Now, my first point about how to nurture teachers towards that student leadership starts with empathy. Okay? And to make this point, I'm going to go to one of my favorite educators. Her name's Alexis Wiggins, who happens to be the daughter of Grant Wiggins, whom some of you might have heard of down the line. He was the trailblazer behind Understanding by Design. Now, a little over 10 years ago, Alexis, teacher coach, she got this feeling that the school that she was helping to lead was becoming a wee bit lackluster. She loved teachers, and that she loved the teachers that she had the privilege of working with and supporting. They were doing the moves they were taught to do, but student performance was stagnant, to say the least. And so she decided to become a student for a couple of days. And when I say become a student, she didn't go back in time. She didn't have a time machine. And she didn't just shadow a student, but she became a student. She lined up at 7:30 in the morning, went to every class. She took lecture notes, completed all the classwork, and when even applicable, she took the assessments that students were taking. She truly became a student at her school. And she came away from that experience with 3 big takeaways that I often refer to as gut punches, right? These are the ones that, these are the realizations that kind of stop you in your tracks, right? The first of these was, I'm tired. Students sit all day, and sitting is exhausting. Even the teachers she found to be the most engaging had students sitting for large portions of the lessons, right? You sit that long, your butt is going to hurt. You're going to be bored, which is the second realization here. I'm bored, right? Not only am I tired, but I'm bored. And she found that her students were sitting passively through 90% of their classes. Now, I know this is probably a wee bit contextual, but I'm willing to take the bet that this is not too dissimilar from many other contexts around the world, at least the ones that I've had the opportunity to take part in. Right? I feel like the third one here is, I feel like I'm in the way. Right? As a student, school, by its design, makes students feel a little bit like a nuisance all day long. That's kind of another gut punch, right? And I mean, think about it, right? If you're a student walking through the current school paradigm, the structures that's dominant, students are constantly being told to sit down, be quiet, get in line. I too, if I was asked to do those things, told to do those things, I'd feel like I was a nuisance if I was hearing that day in and day out. So let's have some empathy for our students. Let's not just listen, but really walk in solidarity with their experience. And let's try and change that up. I think we can. And one way to build this empathy is to train teachers to go deep. One of my favorite teaching books is this book called In Search of Deeper Learning by Jal Meada and Sarah Fine, right? In this book, they go on a quest to find where deeper learning is happening at a systems level. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling you that they don't find this. But what they do find are powerful examples, and they come to define deeper learning as this confluence of 3 things. Mastery, which is this acquiring content and developing skills. Identity, becoming personally connected to the content and the people that surround it, kind of being invited into a discipline and kind of seeing yourself as a mathematician or a scientist or a historian, right? Having this invitation to kind of inform your own identity as a learner. And then the third one, creativity, right? The shift that occurs from sharpening skills and accumulating knowledge and content into a place of being able to do or to make something in that field. So, right, so mastery, identity, creativity, all kind of coming together here. And I think that we, as teacher trainers in this field of teacher preparation, I think we can orient ourselves to go in that direction, right? To get away from that superficial test-taking environment there. And with that empathy and the ability to go deeper, we must help our teachers aim for more. Now, when I say more, I think that makes a lot of people nervous because we're already asking our teachers to do way too much. And I'm not talking about more worksheets or more time or more whatever. I'm talking about, we have this awesome responsibility to nurture student leadership and to go kind of even broader when it comes to our outcomes. Now, as many of you might know, so Teach for All, where I work, it's a global network. more than 60 independent, locally led partner organizations. And we're working to develop collective leadership to ensure that all children get the chance to fulfill their potential. This is an incredible, powerful, natural laboratory for innovation in education. And over the last 5 or so years, we've collaborated with over 4,500 students, teachers, coaches, community members, researchers, and policymakers from across the globe to crowdsource studies of transformational classrooms, right? These are these pockets around the world that are doing some amazing things in their classrooms and demonstrating an orientation towards student leadership. And the result of all this is this evolving teaching as collective leadership framework, which is on your screen here. And this is an actionable, locally customizable framework aimed at growing students as leaders of a better future. Now, I look at this framework not as a script for teaching and learning, like many teaching frameworks that have come before, right? I don't think those scripts work. And I think they kind of narrow and confine teachers in their classrooms and limit their own creativity and their ability to take risks, which I heard in the last presentation here too. But rather, I see this as like a theory of change that positions student leadership as the purpose of schooling in order to actualize on a broader array of outcomes, right? Well-being, connectedness, awareness, agency, and mastery, right? All of those outcomes kind of weaving together, married together even. And I feel like this type of guy can help ground teacher preparation on the purpose of building that student leadership, because gosh, we need it right now. Now, to close, I have this quote about Tagore in my office as a reminder to myself each day, right? And the highest education is that which does not merely give information, but brings our life in harmony with all of existence. So if we take that to be true, how do we rethink teacher preparation to make this happen? I think this is a question that all of us can dig into, and I think it's a pretty fun one to do so. So thank you so much. Thanks for having me today. I'm going to stay on if there's any questions, but I'm going to pass it back over and look forward to hearing from you.
Ritika, you're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Taylor. There are a lot of resonance with what you have shared on the chat. And I absolutely agree. There is a need of digging deep and pausing and thinking who we are as learners first, as teachers. And a lot of people are resonating with how you have shared about collective leadership, and we would share that with the audience later as well. Thank you so much for your time, and really grateful.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Next, I would like to introduce our next speaker. He is Gaurav Gupta. Gaurav Gupta is the Chief Growth Officer at Ekstep Foundation, and he has been instrumental in working with the government to scale Diksha platform, which we all might have heard of. It's the world's largest government-backed school education platform, and it's actually the first DPI in education in India. He's currently leading the efforts on Onset, the open network for employment and skilling transformation, by leveraging the power of AI and DPI. He's absolutely passionate about solving large-scale problems by leveraging technology, and that's why he is here. He has been a business leader for more than 23 years of cross-functional experience across the industries. I welcome Gaurav to share his learnings and his journey on how he has leveraged AI in enabling teachers.
Thank you, Geetika. Can you hear me well? Just checking.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, Gaurav, we can hear you very well.
All right. So thank you for the introduction, Geetika. Really happy to be here. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of this conference. I think a lot of important conversations about what can be done in the field of education. So in this context, I'll share some of the stuff that we at Ekstep Foundation have been doing. Of course, working with the ecosystem across Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, the way we call it, which is basically the government players, the private ecosystem players, as well as the social sector players. And given today's topic is about what is the kind of enabling role that AI can play in the lives of the educators. So I have, let me just present the slides also. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, Gaurav, we can see. All good.
All right, great. So I've kind of divided the session into three parts, which is looking at it from the perspective of how educators can be users of AI and hence can leverage AI for different purposes. I will give you a little bit about one such use case, but I'll also probably leave you with a couple more kind of tools that you can try, especially as users. Then, of course, how educators can be facilitators in the learning of a child. And that itself is a very, very important thing. So that's the second scenario that I'll talk about. And then the third, in terms of how educators can be contributors to, AI and what it can really enable for people. So first we'll jump into educators as users. Now, before I jump in, I'll just basically give you also a very quick perspective that I think all of us are aware of how the new education policy came about. And in that context, it led to the development and evolution of also the national curriculum framework, where a lot of experts had been working on figuring out how the principles and the goals that have been set out in the new education policy can be achieved through change in the teaching and the classroom practices, as well as what students learn. And that's the reason why something like national curriculum framework had to also evolve. So many experts across the country, and maybe some of you might have also played a role in helping evolve that, were a part of it. Now, as that came about, one key element of the national curriculum framework was its focus on learning during the foundational stage, the foundational years of a child, which is typically from ages 3 to 8. And in that context, what is the role that teachers can play in terms of enabling the child, right? So, in this context, one of the things that the Ministry of Education got started with was this entire idea of Jadui Pitara, which is like a magic box, which is basically a set of toys that can be uh, distributed across the schools in the country and can be available in every single classroom. Because the core idea of foundational stage learning is learn through play, right? And because that's what young kids really need, so that they can learn and develop a sense of different aspects through that. But as that was getting done, and it was launched in 2023, around February, I think 20th of February 2023, when the Ministry of Education was trying to implement it across the country. They realized that getting that digital Jadui Pitara box, and this is what it looks like, across the entire country costs a lot of money, and they were really trying to optimize costs and ensure that it's well distributed across the nation in all schools, all classrooms. But they soon realized that it's going to take quite a bit of time and a lot of budgets to be able to do that. And hence the ministry came up with the idea that why shouldn't really we look at how can you digitally enable the idea of Jadui Pitara, so that a teacher in the classroom, or even a parent at home, or even an Anganwadi worker can engage with students in activities that emphasize the idea of learning through play. Because see, the point is that if we all look around us, the surroundings that we have, it is there are enough avenues which can be used as toys, and there are many activities that can be done, which can be engaging for kids, and they can learn through play in that context. But the imagination or the ideas are of what can be those activities, what kind of things can be done. That's not so easy to dispense, right? And towards that end, what had actually happened was that the committee and a lot of experts, as a part of the national curriculum framework, they had also written some 25 plus books, manuals with different guidelines. If you add them all up, it works out to something like 5,000 plus pages, right? Now imagine any teacher, any Anganwadi worker, or for that matter, even a parent being able to go through that much of material, where the wealth of knowledge in terms of what can be done to engage children better in the classrooms, it's kind of written in those pages. A lot of effort has gone into that, so that's like real gold. But you cannot expect everyone to go through that. In fact, I usually joke about it. If someone were to ask me to read 5,000 plus pages, I may take probably 2-3 years to go through that, and probably after that I will forget more than 90% of what's mentioned over there. So the real question was, how do you basically put that expertise in the hands of the teachers by leveraging AI? And that's the place where Ministry of Education, along with NCRT as the nodal body, they basically partnered with us in terms of helping develop that capability, which leverages AI, generative AI, to put this power in the hands of the teachers, the Anganwadi workers, and even parents. And that is what was given the name of E-Jadui Pitara. If some of you would like to try that out, then the link for that is mentioned over here. It will take you to a page from where you can actually check for a bot which is available both on WhatsApp as well as on Telegram, and from there you can download it. Otherwise, you can directly go to the Play Store and also download the E-Jadui Pitara app, right? So basically, it works across different interfaces, and it allows you to do that using either WhatsApp or Telegram, or by downloading an app on your phone. But what it essentially does, and probably in the interest of time, I'll not ask you to do that exercise live, because you can probably try it out on your own. But it gives a lot of innovative ideas. I'll just show you a couple of screenshots in terms of what it does. I know you cannot probably read this text, but I will spell it out for you. So imagine a scenario where a teacher has a mixed classroom, wants to engage children through activities, and do it in a fashion that they do not just appreciate things which are around solving a maths kind of a problem in the early ages, but also, and of course, the relevant thing in terms of number counting, addition, subtraction, simple things, and also link it to art related kind of aspects, because we all talk about integrated learning and so on and so forth. So here's an example of a teacher actually asking a question. I'll spell it out in Hindi and then also translate. कि गणित पढ़ाते समय कला शिक्षण का संवेश कैसे करें जब मैं अपने क्लासरूम में पढ़ा रहा हूँ, आप मुझे कुछ उदाहरण दे सकते हैं क्या? Right, and the advantage of something like this is you can do this by either typing in the bot, or you can even through your voice talk to it in different languages, not just in English and Hindi, but in actually 10 different regional languages. That is what it has been enabled for at the moment. And the bot actually gives you a suggestion in terms of what is the kind of activity that you can do with children using objects which are around you, and hence being able to leverage that in the classroom, because at times you may be looking for more ideas in terms of what I can do. And likewise, you can actually ask many other questions to the bot in terms of how do you ensure that if, let's say, there is a child with a certain type of learning disability, what kind of an activity to be done with that child so that the child is not left behind, and you can still do interesting things which engages the child in the classroom and helps them learn. Likewise, if kids are usually getting distracted in the classroom, then what should I do as an activity which can really engage them inside the classroom? So any type of a question you can actually ask them, of course, in the realm of uh, uh, teaching and the kind of activities that you can do with children. And what the bot does is it's not giving you random suggestions. Basically, what it is doing is it is looking at those 25 plus books and manuals, the 5,000 plus pages, and based on that, it is suggesting to you a response which has been calibrated based on what the experts had to say and picked up from those resources. And that's why at the bottom you will see when the bot generates a response, it also shows you the source from where it has been taken. Right? So you're not getting random answers, you're getting specific answers as advised by the experts, which are hidden in those books, using which you can actually engage the kids in a better way in the classroom, depending on whether you need suggestions for the same or not, right? And it can be used by teachers, it can be used by Anganwadi workers, it can even be used by parents at home. Imagine a parent asking the question to the bot that, look, my child has come back home, I'm busy, but always wants to watch TV. Can I do an interesting activity using the vegetables at home so that the child can learn not just number counting but also addition? And the bot will suggest you an activity, right? And that's what you can do. Likewise, it has the ability to also create stories on the fly, uh, 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 and you can actually suggest characters and situations to the bot, and based on that it will craft a story on the fly. And because when you're talking about young children, of course they love to listen to stories. So teachers can do it, parents can do it, Anganwadi workers can do it. It is voice enabled, it's in the local language, and most importantly, it is giving you those suggestions by looking at the wealth of expertise that the experts have poured into those 5,000 plus pages, and also generating other possibilities for you so that you can engage with children in a much more meaningful fashion. So that's one such example of a bot with multiple capabilities called eJadui Pitara, launched by the Ministry of Education along with NCRT, which enables teachers as users or even parents and Anganwadi workers as users to engage with children in a very, very meaningful way. Likewise, let me also mention a couple of similar examples. I think a lot of you may be aware of something like, of course, Khan Academy. So Khan Migo is their version of using generative AI so that teachers can be the users of it, not just students, but actually teachers can also be the users of it to generate assessments, to ask it a way of providing a better explanation and so on and so forth. Likewise, another company called Convigenius has created a bot which is called Swift Chat, which is also available for use not just by again children but also by teachers, so that teachers can probably ask a doubt, and then the bot can suggest this is the way you can handle that question and can resolve the doubt of the child. So the good news here is that these kind of capabilities are coming up so that educators can be the users of it to ultimately get suggestions around what can be a better way to engage children in the classroom or the way they teach, or to resolve their doubts. So many possibilities opening up. Of course, with that, let me also call out some of these things are still in early stages, and it with time that they will improve. The number of scenarios in which they can be used, that will also improve. But this is the kind of innovation which is happening in the country, right? Imagine you being able to do this in your local language, talking to a bot, versus always browsing interfaces and so on and so forth. With that, I'll move to the second example of how educators can be facilitators. And this is a thing that we are doing along with the Tamil Nadu government and the education department. So here, let me describe the problem to you that, see, of course, children, and a lot of us know there are enough reports which have come from Pratham around Asar, that a lot of children struggle with, being able to read their own language, right? And there is a language reading complexity. especially, for example, in something like Tamil, you have so many characters, consonants, etc., etc. And it's not that every child can, do that in an easy fashion. So here's an example of Channa, who's a sixth grader in a school in Hosur in Tamil Nadu, right? And the diagnostic kind of revealed that she's barely able to read a simple few words, right? Just probably around 9 syllables. And that's the reason why she could not really read words, she could not read letters, and she was really struggling. And that's the reason why, and this is a kid in sixth grade. And I'm sure as educators, you would have come across many kids with such problems. And of course, they are at different learning levels. So, what should one do in such a situation and in such a scenario? With along with working with the state, what we did was we crafted a AI-based solution which allows the child to improve their learning or the reading proficiency in the language, in the local language, again by using AI, where the child would sit in front of a computer. Actually, let me show you that thing. So you see, many children here sitting inside, the computer lab. And in the computer lab, they are interacting with the computer, and the computer is actually giving them suggestions as they spell out things in terms of listening and speaking as they read different syllables and characters and so on and so forth. And in a very gradual kind of a way, it's actually able to improve the reading proficiency of children. In fact, going back to Chandana's example, so with just 4 hours of sessions in the labs, around 15 such sessions, her reading proficiency changed from being able to recognize just 9 syllables to now recognize 31 syllables. And with that, she could actually begin to read simple sentences. So now it's, of course, something which is happening in Tamil Nadu across 6,000 plus schools. That's what had been happening over the last year or so. But seeing the success of it, they will be expanding the number of schools where such a thing happens for children in grade 6 to 8. And looking at that success, many other states have actually come forward to implement something like this so that one can improve the reading proficiency of kids. Now, why did I say that, educators play a key role in this? So see, ultimately, it's the educator who is a key facilitator in enabling this. It's not just about taking a child and taking them to the, computer classroom and making them go through that. But on the back of it, even helping the child schedule how they should, engage with something like this. What is the kind of assessment that the child should do? What is their learning journey, learning plan? Whether they are doing it regularly or not doing it regularly. So actually, educators are playing a very, very important facilitation role, and this creates an advantage ultimately for educators, because when those kids show improvement in their reading abilities, their ability to comprehend the class and hence perform well in the class also goes up significantly. Right. So in a way, it's creating a win-win kind of a situation where the educator as the facilitator is helping the child go through this and develop much better reading capabilities and show improvement in terms of how they engage in the classroom. So this is an example of how something like this is happening, where educators take the role of the facilitator. Likewise, again, a few other such innovations which are happening. Another example I'll talk about is that educators typically also correct exam papers on the back of an exam, right? And when, especially in government schools, they have to, correct the answer sheet, tabulate the results, create a report. That report then, goes to the higher authorities and so on and so forth. Now that takes a lot of time and effort for the educators. So here again, for educators, how the once they've checked the answer sheet, how those results can be tabulated in an easy fashion using the power of AI, so that they don't have to create a report card and send it upwards, or for individual students. That's where again AI is assisting educators in a big way, and educators end up being the facilitators in that kind of a role, so that this data can be captured easily, and it leads to now timely action, timely reports being made, and hence takes away a lot of work that they have to otherwise do. Something like this is being implemented at scale in Uttar Pradesh, and Gujarat had also done it in the past. So again, example of how AI is benefiting the role of educators as facilitators. Finally, I'll come to the role of educators as contributors. So see, here the primary thing is that when we talk about generative AI and its usage, uh, India is a country where we speak many languages, right? Of course, we cannot expect everybody to be interacting with any kind of a device only by browsing. Uh, in a country like India, you want people to be able to talk to things, do that in the local language, and so on and so forth, right? And that is what leads to people not being able to just use many other things in a digital fashion, but also in terms of how AI can power uh, different use cases, even in the context of education, where it's not just browsing based thing, not just being done in English and Hindi as languages, but local languages of India, etc. So here again, educators play a key role as a contributor. So government of India had started a mission called Bhashini, which is to create digital public infrastructure for language. And in that mission, they are basically building a corpus of language related data, so that this data and the models on the back of it can be used to power different use cases, including those in education. And what does one do? How do they go about it? They, of course, invite contributions from people, including educators, to contribute spoken words, to contribute by giving checking sentences in terms of whether that has been done right. So you can contribute to it in a by typing different things in local languages. You can speak and contribute sentences, and so on and so forth, right? Ultimately, where it goes is it helps build this language corpus in the local languages of India, which can be used to power different use cases, including those in education. And that's where educators can play the role of key contributors towards this mission being done in India, powered by Bhashini. And you can see the number of languages in which it is happening in India across different aspects, and how across many, many districts such a thing is happening, where many people are coming together and doing that. Again, for more details, you can refer to this link from Bhashini, where the initiative is called Bhashadan. And in Bhashadan, you can find different ways of contributing to that, so that things really change in that context. Uh, I think in the interest of time, I'll stop here, but I'll just summarize to say educators are building the future of the nation. Uh, so, how one can leverage AI to enable educators to teach and engage children better? There are capabilities being done where educators are the users of AI, but it's helping them do what they need to do well by being an assistant to them, right? Likewise, educators as facilitators, so that children can improve their learning and take it from there, and educators as contributors towards this important mission in India under Bhashini called Bhashadan, so that you build a large corpus, so that our future generations, they don't have to struggle with just dealing with digital in only one or two languages and only by browsing, but actually through voice, through feature phones and whatnot. I think humongous potential in terms of where AI can take it. But of course, having said that, let me also call out that one needs to incorporate guardrails, so that none of this happens in a fashion that we all don't want. And I think by participating in this journey, you can actually make it enriching, not just for yourselves, but for many others at the scale of the nation. So the invitation is for all of you to be a part of this journey. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you so much, Gaurav, for sharing that. I think lot of things that stood out to me, specifically Fitki being in EdTech, a lot of things I was also able to connect with. And I think the real life examples that you shared, right, actual examples that made it easier also to understand the bots that you mentioned about. Fitki is also launching our WhatsApp bot, which is Fitki's interactive digital assistant with us. We're also trying to use that for our educators so that they can learn using that. And I think the main point for me is definitely educators as facilitators, how we can make use of all of these resources, examples for our students, and definitely contributors. What is there for the future? Like what are we giving to the next generation so that things can be much easier? Thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate this. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and wish you all success, happy holidays, and a very happy new year to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. Yeah, yeah. With that, I'm going to invite Geetika to invite our next speaker in the next set of sessions.
Yeah. Our next speaker is Gayatri. Gayatri has been in field of education for the last 20 years, and I had the privilege of working with her before. She is the Chief Executive Officer at 321 Education Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to improve student outcomes and also upskill teacher and works in teacher professional development. She's absolutely passionate about building a strong foundation for children in low-income communities and building teacher proficiency as well. And she's working on scaling the FLN programs in budget private schools. Previously, she has worked as CEO of the preschools division at Hippocampus Learning Centers. And prior to that, she was the project head at Educom Solutions as well. Today, we are going to talk about a topic which is very important when we think of teacher profession development, the importance of teacher well-being as a pillar in teacher profession development. And Gayatri will be engaging in a set of questions to understand more about her perspective and her journey about the same. So I think Gayatri, as we start, I think my first question to you is going to be about that. Why do we need to even talk about teacher professional development? Why is it important? Why do we need to talk about teacher well-being in teacher professional development?
Maybe we should answer both. Why teacher professional development in the first place, and then well-being in teacher professional development. But first, thanks for having me here, Gitika. And I think, like any profession, needs people to upskill themselves constantly to stay relevant with what's changing around you. Whether it's a nurse working in a hospital, a doctor, a surgeon. Similarly, teachers require that. We know that it's a part and parcel, and therefore teacher professional development is a very, very important ongoing process to upskill the teachers and ensuring that they keep themselves relevant with what's really changing. Now, what happens is, how do we look at this well-being thing, right? Maybe let us start with asking, what is this well-being? And I would want to stay put with the professional well-being of the teacher. So there are many aspects. There's a personal aspect, there's a family aspect, there's a social aspect. Let's look at professional well-being of a teacher as a professional, right? When do we all feel good doing something as a professional? No. The first thing that somebody needs is a reasonable income. The second thing that a person needs is a decent place to work in. It's clean, it's nice, it's well kept. It does not question, it's dignified in a way. The third thing is, do you have the important critical tools to work with? Do I have a blackboard? Do I have a whiteboard? Do I have an AI-enabled board, whatever that might be? But does the teacher have all of those things, right? And assuming does she get recognition, right? So income, recognition, tools to work, the right kind of space to work in. And I think anybody who develops anything in this country towards teacher professional development has to tick or see if these are available to the teacher and build the program on top of availability or lack of availability of one or all of these elements. So it's not just, I would say, Gitika, not just talking about it, but actually making it as an integral component of what we are building the teachers towards. And is she in a position to receive this? So I think that's the biggest factor. Do we consider all of these components when we build a teacher professional development program? Otherwise, the danger is that what we build may not be relevant to that teacher at that period in time. right? Keeping these attributes in mind ensures relevance. If it is relevant, it will be absorbed, and hopefully things would, take shape in the classroom.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when we think of these pillars that you talked about, when we think of teacher well-being, these are very critical for us to think about when we are planning interventions in teacher professional development, right? And a lot of times the bird eye view is on the students, right? What is the impact on student learning, and how does it impact student learning? So, what do you think is teacher well-being a contributor to student learning? Is there a direct relation? What has been your experience?
Of course, it's not even a question mark. If somebody is happy and feeling content and feeling excited and sees a lot of personal growth in her profession, she would ensure that her children are learning and they, develop into wholesome human beings. So there is absolutely no doubt about it. I would want to go back a little bit and question, what do people like us, many organizations like ours, keep in mind when we design something, keeping in mind, right? Is teacher professional development a means to an end,
Yeah.
or is teacher professional development an end in itself? Suppose you say if it's means to an end, the end goal is student learning.
Yeah.
Of course, it's got to happen, right? Then what the ingredients of what you put in the program would be different as compared to saying teacher professional development is an end in itself. Then the ingredients of the program are very, very different.
Yeah.
Right? And if you ask me, I would say when we now equate it with your well-being, when does a well-being happen? If a professional, if this teacher is able to deliver results, assuming all the other four attributes that we spoke about are there, income is there, tools are there, things are there. Finally, she feels happy if her children are learning. She gets recognized and by parents and supported by parents if the children are learning, right? So therefore, of course, well-being plays a role, but it is so intricately connected with how the teacher not just feels but delivers. Uh, I would add one component saying, irrespective of what the end goal is, each and every teacher professional development program has to either look at the student learning or help the teachers look at the student learning outcomes and then recalibrate their efforts and support the teachers in recalibrating her efforts towards uh, being successful in her classroom.
Right, for sure. And I think for teacher to feel that their well-being is at the core, only then they will be able to also focus on student learning as an outcome or as an end, like you shared. But a lot of times when we think of creating teacher professional development programs, our eyes are on the student learning. But as teacher well-being, if we are not able to see a direct relation, it gets missed, right? We don't intentionally maybe think about teacher well-being when we are planning interventions, and hence, do you think we can track it? Is that possible? Or how do we convince people who are working in teacher professional development area that well-being is at the core, that you need to start there and then go from there?
We have happiness index, so we can definitely have a teacher well-being index, right? So I think it's definitely measurable. It's hard, it's measurable. But Gitika, I would want to step aside and say, should we get into that or should we not get into that? Teacher well-being is critical, but are we going to then all work towards creating one more very nice, measuring tool that measures teachers' well-being, and then we'll question the tool for the next 10 years? I would say, can we look at the basics that a teacher needs for her well-being, and then, come up with even rudimentary mechanisms to always see for these in our programs. For example, first example, if you work with a state, there could be 4 different organizations working with that state and all giving inputs to the teacher at different levels. Organization A, organization B, C, D. The teacher is the end funnel who's supposed to catch all of this and take it to her classroom. It can be very daunting. It does get overwhelming. And in the end, the teacher ends up just picking and choosing what works for her, right? So one thing would be, when we talk about well-being, are we giving too many inputs or too few inputs? That's the first question. Then this next question is things like, does she have the right kind of building to work in? Does she have the agency? So, is a teacher allowed to say, I will only do 8 chapters in the curriculum and not complete all the 12 chapters? Anybody who has worked in teacher professional development understands this entire problem of saying, okay, curriculum completion versus have the children learned? You know, that big question that comes up. And things like there are private schools where there are schools where we know teachers are questioned if they sit for 5 minutes. They are expected to continuously move about in the classrooms because continuous movement means you are engaging the children, right? There are many such practices. So it's very, to answer the question directly, is it possible to build a tool to gauge teacher well-being? Yes. I would say let's not make it very microscopic and try to sort of complicate our own lives, but look at the most common, most important critical elements and see, is it there in the teacher's life, is it not there? If something is there or too many things are there, can you remove them? And if something is not there, can you get them back? Say, if we at 3-to-1 Education Foundation, so if we are working with the municipal corporation to build teacher capacity, we cannot do much about changing how the buildings are built, right? Or if there's an infrastructural change required, and then you have to constantly, then you have to say, okay, do we make it a part of our agenda to constantly talk to the governmental agencies, figure out how some of these things can be built, and how much energy are we going to put into it? So some of those things actually would be more meaningful than trying to build a very, very comprehensive well-being index. But having said that, keeping an eye on the well-being, is it important? Yes, it is, and it's quite critical actually.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing. I think first, absolutely agree. The fundamental needs to be in place to even think about teacher well-being. And secondly, I think Subir also mentioned in his keynote address that we need to streamline the user experience, right? We need to streamline how teachers are receiving it. And then their teacher well-being maybe is going to be a byproduct, which is the most necessary byproduct of a process or interventions that we are planning when we are working at teacher professional development programs. And when we think of teacher professional development programs, there is a balance of excellence and teacher well-being. We are also asking teachers to apply a lot of innovative techniques, apply AI, apply so many new curriculums that are coming. So there is a push towards excellence, towards 21st century skill, but a lot of times teacher well-being is taken at a back seat, right? So how do we balance excellence and teacher well-being together in any program, in any intervention?
Actually, I don't think there is a need to balance if the basics are in place. Yeah. When we say excellence in any profession, excellence in teaching, is she equipped with the skills? And is she given the time to practice those skills? Is she allowed to make a few mistakes as she masters those skills? I think those are the things to take care of. I think the balancing question comes, Gitika, when many people are the agents of what happens in the classroom, and the teacher is not and does not have the agency to decide what happens in a classroom. I'll go back to that basic. So can the balance be achieved? Yes. But imagine there are 4 people. Somebody is saying use this AI tool. Somebody is saying go and use this app. It is on Google. Somebody says do this. Somebody says do that. The teacher can only do that much within a 40-minute period, with thousands of decisions being taken, with children around, and with limited tools at her hand. So the entire question is, as we streamline, like you said, the user experience, the user has to find it easy to adopt any new intervention or a curriculum or a tool. So long as that ease is there, she will excel at using it. The other factor that comes into play, I'm wondering where the question even comes from, because it might come from the place, Gitika, where maybe all the people who are in the teaching profession are not qualified to be in that profession. And that's where the problem of excellence comes in. When I say qualified, maybe they are made and they are good for certain other professions, but teaching involves a certain level of constant learning, constant upskilling, being able to deal with children, parents, all the stakeholders, right? So the excellence factor comes if she is a subject matter expert at whatever she's teaching. She really loves engaging with children and can sort of help them learn, loves engaging, can engage with parents and other stakeholders, can be a contributor to creating a healthy ecosystem with her peers. And these are all markers of ensuring excellence over a period of time. Now, the one aspect of curriculum that we spoke about is very closely linked to subject matter expertise. So if the person who is teaching a certain subject is equipped with those abilities, the question of excellence doesn't come in. Even if you give her new interventions, she will be able to absorb it. The problem comes in if the fundamentals are not there in place. So, fundamentals are in place, this thing should go through, and we should not have a problem with the balancing act at all.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I could hear a lot of fundamentals in the way that you shared, be it agency for teacher to take their agency to decide what is happening in a classroom or to make mistakes or think, and then they'll be able to take whatever comes their way because they have that experience in teaching, right? And when you think of agency, there's a question on the chat as well that when we think of the programs and the teacher professional development programs, how they're made, agency is a little tricky to act in a little tricky in a way that a lot of times teachers have, it's a top to down approach, right? So teachers are told what to do, and hence their agency is limited at times. So what do you think that what can be done to in actions or in any way while we are designing interventions to give that agency back to teachers, and how can we allow teachers to make mistake and be okay with that?
There are many layers here. I'll try to unpack one at a time. How to this entire conundrum of teacher agency. Let me try and take an example and explain it. We all know that creating lesson plans is a very integral to a teacher's profession. Right? She's got to plan what she's going to do with children over a week's time, over a month's time, over the year. For that, there needs to be goals, etc., etc. Now, how do we deal with this lesson planning? When we see that lesson planning does not happen, we give teachers ready-made lesson plans. There is nothing wrong with that. It ensures that certain amount of median level practice happens. Now, what happens is when we start trying to ensure that each and every aspect of that lesson plan is being implemented in the classroom. Now, these lesson plans have been written by somebody with the best of the intentions, but cannot suit and fit every classroom environment. So one way of building agency here. So we see that you need some centralized, standardized lesson plans.
Yeah.
You do not want the teacher to be made, to be starved of the agency out there. So what do? So you can give a lesson plan, you can give a template, you can ask her to pick and choose the activities or the pedagogical things that she needs to do in the classroom that fits her classroom. Because maybe she has a multi-age, multi-grade classroom. Maybe she doesn't have certain tools or access to those tools. So there could be an activity with tools, activity without sophisticated tools, something that works for her. This is a very simple example of how the teacher feels, oh, I have been given a choice. There are 4 options, and I can choose 1 or 2 out of these 4 activities, and I can make it work. So that's an example of how you balance between what we want to do en masse, at scale, standardization, and how to sort of allow her to customize out of that standardization within her classroom. So that is one example of how this could be done. We have actually attempted this in budget private schools over the last 2 years, actually. We started with just 20% of the teachers building their own lesson plans. Today, we have 80% of the teachers who are building lesson plans. And what I shared is something that we have done. And more than us, why did the teachers take to it? They took to it because then they were not being held accountable to a plan built by somebody else. They were being held accountable to a plan built by themselves. So, that's one example, and I'm certain there could be many such examples that different agencies and organizations could work with.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you for sharing that into a very tangible form. I think when we think of choice of learning has to be with teachers, has to be with students, and that becomes a very critical point of any intervention that we are planning. And I think going back to now to a teacher's side, we know that teachers take a lot of decisions every day, right? 1,500 decisions or more they take. So how can they individually take care of their well-being? What will you suggest, or what have you seen that teachers should do to take care of their own well-being? There are many teachers joined us here, so would love to hear that.
I would say if you're a teacher, I think you have to learn to negotiate for time. That's the most critical thing that anyone as a teacher needs to do, because if you have free period, some other teacher is absent, you're sent off to the other class. Yeah, you don't have time to plan. You have to do so many things at such speed. I think if you have to do this, you have to negotiate for time in a nice manner within your school ecosystem and then show the results. Because if I get 2 additional periods to do this thinking, planning, or researching to figure out what activity ideas I could use or what I could do in the classroom very differently, and then showcase it to the school leader. I think that's one of the first things. When you do that, you're doing many things on the side. You're trying to negotiate for time. Then the question is, what are you going to do with that time? You're going to research. You're going to find out new ways of, making teaching, learning interesting in the classroom, new ways of engaging with the children. The moment, and then you practice it in the classroom. What happens? You have experimented with a new method. It is working for you. You feel good. Children are happy. You have developed professionally, and that's what professional development is all about. It is learning by doing, right? But I think the biggest factor that stops teachers, Gitika, from doing this is lack of time, right? Lack of time and lack of incentive. Incentive is much more uh, trickier a subject, so I will not touch that. But can we negotiate for time? Any teacher in a good ecosystem needs at least a couple of hours per week, if not more, to plan ahead for 3 or 4 classrooms that she might be teaching in a week.
For sure. And I think lack of time is such an important important thing for us to think about, right? And when we are thinking of my last question would be, when we are thinking of teacher professional development programs or doing interventions for it, how can we be conscious about time of teachers? How can we think of the time constraints of teachers and plan interventions accordingly?
First, see if you are the only player designing intervention for the teacher. Let us say it is a state ABC, right?
Yeah.
And a state ABC, how many other organizations are doing something similar to you? That's the first thing. If required, negotiate with the other organizations at the back end. Do not plop everything on the teacher, yeah, at the front end. I think that's the first one. The second thing is actually take a gauge of the time availability. Ask the teachers, ask the other people in the system. That's what we do more than a needs analysis. We really look at how much time is really available and number of hours on an ongoing basis. Many programs have start of the year, mid of the year, end of the year format. We do not look at how do we purchase time to support teacher when she has a problem. So the coaching elements, giving her a feedback elements are often missing. How do they are missing because they are expensive, resource heavy. But can they be considered? Because oftentimes it might be more valuable for the teacher to attend a 30-minute coaching session as against a 1-hour training session. And assuming all of this is happening online, right? So the first thing is, how many people are giving input? So what is the total quantum of inputs being received by the teacher in a year? Number 2 is how many hours should be apportioned for training and similar activities, and how many hours can be apportioned for coaching? Because that's when customization, doing something according to the teacher's need can come into place, right? These are the essentials to be kept in mind while building TPD programs. And the number three is, of course, trying to see if certain things could be done embedded within the school system. Say you do something for 3 months, and then say if there's a monthly practice of, say, peer review, peer observation, peer learning, sharing of practices, what is working with, student engagement in management in classroom A versus B. Everything need not come from top down. There could be ways to facilitate interactions among 5 or 6 different teachers in the same school, and these are very common practices. You have communities of practice and so on and so forth. But the question is not, if we are going to try and buy more time or get more time, we will not. Time utna hi hoga, right?
Yeah.
The question is, and that would be, we can't live in that la la land. The question is, how do we use those 12 hours or 15 hours or 25 hours available in a year in an innovative manner so that the best use can be done? Because if the teacher really feels that by investing those 25 hours,
Yeah.
it was valuable to her, she will come back for more. She will ask for more. Then you don't have to push for more, right? I think that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. I think first is to understand the context, like what is available out there, and understand in depth how does it actually look for a teacher at the ground. And secondly, to think of innovative ways. It doesn't have to be top to down, like you said. It can be peer to peer learning. It can be coaching. It can be innovative ways to do teacher professional development. And thank you for actually clicking on the innovation bit around teacher professional development and taking care of teacher well-being. One more question that is there is, how can a culture of taking care of well-being can be built intentionally by the teacher, by the experts, and how do we do that as a culture? Because I think we are having conversation, but a lot of time it is getting missed. So how can we build that culture? And how can we start that dialogue and conversations around it?
I think it comes from really understanding a teacher's job, respecting her, and giving her the time and the space to do the job. It's as simple and as complex as that. What does this mean in actual terms? If a teacher has a free period, we feel that she has to be used like some gadget, कि ये gadget बंद नहीं होना चाहिए, इसको दूसरे classroom में भेज दो. Let's send her off to another classroom. One example. Another example, many a times teachers are sent off to do so many administrative duties. It makes sense to do some administrative jobs and some administrative duties. But if she's yanked out of her classroom and sent out to do administrative duties, what are we saying as a system? We are saying we don't respect your time. We don't respect your job. Does anyone ever think of yanking a doctor while he is talking to a patient in a room and saying, okay, आप ये form भर के आओ, आप ये data भर के आओ? That doesn't happen. I think that has to start from the people surrounding the teachers. And here I would not put the onus on the teachers. Most teachers are doing the best that they can, given the situations, given the ecosystem, and they are actually hungry to really excel in their jobs. The culture has to start at the top with the people around the teacher who are managing her. So one is give her the time, space. Do not yank her out of a classroom. If she has some free period, do not try to use her like some machine that has to constantly keep working, because this machine, if it is not allowed to think, if it is not allowed to plan, it cannot deliver. So that's, I think with just that, stating that, the culture can be built. What is a teacher's job? If this is her JD, let her not take her out of her core job too often. I think that's the first part. It can sound a little controversial, but that's the first thing we've got to do. And the second thing, of course, is also have accountability systems in place. No culture gets built without accountability systems. If a particular teacher, you just need one teacher who is not committed to pull down 9 teachers who are committed. So if you have accountability systems in place that ensures that a teacher who is not performing to the basic requirements of a role well enough has to be given feedback, pulled up. Some measures have to be taken to change those behaviors, because if that does not happen, the other 9 teachers around her who are doing a diligent job uh, t- will feel a little defeated and beaten. So, to sum it up, first is let the teacher do her job. Don't
Yeah.
take her away from her core job. Otherwise, without even telling her, you're disrespecting her. You're not saying that I respect your job. Second thing is put accountability systems in place to ensure that the teachers who are committed are given chances to thrive and grow, and those who are not may want to choose some other profession, but they cannot just stay there not doing their job, because a lot of times that is what impacts culture more than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Gayatri. I think it's about giving that prestige back to teaching, like you
Yeah.
always share. It's about pausing and thinking about teacher well-being as a pillar, and thinking about the context that teachers are in and their experience at the core when we think of any teacher profession development. Thank you for sharing your thoughts today. And the audience has already shared a lot of things that they are resonating with what you have shared. Thank you so much for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Gayatri ma'am. I just want to share like a couple of things I'm also taking away. Teacher wellness framework, right? We have happiness curriculum, but why not maybe this framework for teacher well-being? How do we build teacher agency in teachers, facilitating the COPs and efficiently using our time? How do we take our own ownership of efficiently using our time? And definitely, I think even in the chat also something that people resonated was with understanding and respecting teacher. I think maybe all of them understood, okay, that exactly that is what we want, respect for our time and for the work that we do. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you, Gitika, for facilitating this space.
Thanks, Ellie, Gitika, for having me. Have a very good evening, all of you. Bye.
Thank you,
You.
Gayatri. It's always
With that, I'm very, very excited to invite our next speaker to the stage. We have Srinivas here. He's the founder and chief scientist at PeopleVerse. PeopleVerse is a new path-breaking brain science-powered venture revolutionizing the potential of people and businesses. He has led and established many large teams, employee strategies, greenfield businesses in large global corporations across global geographies. He previously has worked with Saint-Gobain, where he transformed the research India in just 6 months by implementing effective people practices that fuel growth, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Today is going to speak to us about how do we use neuroscience, right, to understand learning and engagement in adults specifically. Thank you, Srinivas. Over to you.
A very good evening, everyone, and thank you, Elizabeth, for introducing. In terms of this particular topic, and I'm so happy that I'm presenting before the teachers from across India. So today the main objective is on understanding key neuroscience principles that influence adult learning, and also kind of develop actionable strategies. So when this particular topic was given, there were two set of things that I was asked to think about: teachers and also the students. So what I would be doing, when Geetika would be presenting these slides, I would be kind of contrasting both the neuroscience principles of adult learning vis-a-vis the kids, in terms of the children, how they play out too. So, so I'll just give a minute to Geetika to get the slides up. Okay. Thank you, Geetika. The first and foremost is I know you've been running marathon sessions. I come from a family of teachers, and I'm so happy that I'm presenting to teachers today. The three P's I request for the next 30 minutes is a pen, a paper, and your presence of being here. I know probably some have just entered the live session and probably hungry, so just bear for another 25 minutes with your presence here. So if we move on, in terms of why we chose this particular topic, one of the key things that you need to understand. In India, we talk about Mata, Pita, Guru, Devam, in terms of the four stages of power that deals with kids, especially when we grow up. But if we look from a science perspective, okay, if we look from a science perspective, the frontal lobe, the frontal lobe is the front part of your head, which is called the prefrontal cortex. It takes almost 25 years to develop. Okay, so when you're, the first part of it is the mother, which is mata. Until 25, there are four role players who have to play who have to substitute till the frontal lobe fully forms. So it is mata, pita, guru, devam. So today I'm addressing the guru part of the population, wherein you are not only a teacher, but you need to understand that you are also substituting the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is responsible for executive function. That's what we call in neuroscience. When we say executive function, it takes care of motor control, thinking, memory formation, working memory, especially abstract thinking, reasoning, and planning part of it. So this takes almost 25 years to develop, and the late maturation of the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe correlates with the higher execution function. And what it also looks at is working memory, especially like teachers. I was listening to the previous speaker, Gayatri. The working memory is always taxed when you are in a high demanding job, because you have to kind of multitask, and the brain runs into fatigue at the end of the day. So when you look at the inhibitory control, like the things that you want to resist so that you could focus, the frontal lobe plays a very important part. So going to the next slide, there is a fantastic research done by Dr. Stanislas from France. And here I would like you to, there is a formula that I have written on the top. When the kids start developing, say when we were kids and when we started right from birth until we reached whichever age we are in today, the first part of memory formation is visual. Okay, identifying the mother, parents, and the family. So sometimes it is also genetically ingrained. That's what the research also states. And the other part of memory formation that comes after visual is the language. That's why you would see babies, kind of focusing on the mouth of the speaker. Okay, so these are two different identities in the brain, and this revolves in the lateral and the parietal part of the skull inside the brain. And what is important here? You see a question mark. You have the visual part of it, you have the language part of it, but there is a very secret ingredient that helps in memory formation. What is the secret ingredient? That is reading. When you allow yourself to read your notes, or when you try to open a new topic that you want to learn yourself, or the students in your own classroom, if you allow them to read, what actually happens is the brain makes a new neural connection between the visual part of the index that carries in terms of its memory and the language part of it. Once the visual and language gets connected through the reading medium, the memory is formed. And not only the memory is formed, it also helps in, we call it as a visual word form area, wherein it helps in the higher order of functioning, like reasoning, logical thinking. So more and more you allow your students to read, more and more you read in terms of newer things, getting prayer art in terms of deeper studies into your own line of subject. What is actually happening is you're forming new neural connections between the visual part of the brain and the language part of the brain, and more you would have the recall of the working memory. Moving to the next slide, what we need to really understand is, this is a classic slide. Don't get bogged down by the what you see on the screen. This is an MRI of the brain, and this is a beautiful research. I think everyone should read this particular research. And what you find here is the red dots. Just focus on the red dots. Whenever the words that you see on the screen, on the top right of the screen, you see many words. some are in different languages other than English. But what you would find is your brain will automatically go and pick the word that you can easily associate by reading. So brain first reads it, and what many of you would have, by default would have read the word is nearby, okay, which is in English. So the most connecting part of the entire brain sequencing when it forms a memory, recall, and application of the working memory is the language part of when you read. So this is a very clear indication of how the memory is formed through reading. So you would have sometimes dyslexic kids. Dyslexia is it shows up in different formats. Some in terms of spelling, some in terms of they kind of misplace the reading of words. So how you could really help them, or if yourself are kind of a dyslexic, how you could help yourself is you could space or put the finger on the para and read. This is just one example, though I'm not an expert in dyslexia, but this is how we could apply it in real-time word. Going to the next particular slide, here I'm going to talk about the actionable strategies. Okay, I'm going to talk about actionable strategies for adult vis-a-vis. I'll kind of interlink with the children in your classroom, so that it also helps you in the application part of it. First is neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is, I'm sure everyone knows it today. It's a widely used terminology. Many of them use, but if for people who don't understand or who don't know what neuroplasticity is, your brain can adapt at any point of time, at any given age, even after 60, 70, 80, 90. There are research even conducted on patients, on subjects who are above 100. You can learn subjects, you can unlearn, relearn many things. So that's called plasticity, neuroplasticity, wherein the brain's nerve cells, the neural connection synapses can disconnect, prune, and form a new connection, or learn a new connection in terms of a memory formation. So what does it mean to you? Kids are designed by nature to learn, adapt, and grow, even in a less than perfect environment. Now, I want you to understand this. Kids can learn from any environment. You don't need to have an AC classroom. You don't need to have the best of facility. Kids have the ability that nature has given to learn from less than perfect environment as well. And brain is a cognitive and an emotional organ. So when your kids, when the children in your classroom kind of look at you, you need to look them back, understanding that they are looking at you from a cognition point of view, which is like learning, or trying to learn what is new in terms of math, physics, science, or math, whatever subject you're teaching. But they're also trying to emotionally connect with you. This is very important. Only when a kid, or even yourself, only when you emotionally connect, the neural synapses form, and it gets reinforced with repeated practice and exposure. Moving to the next slide, in terms of neuroplasticity, the second important thing is attention and focus. So today, when we work with organizations across India, in terms of the complexity, be it a startup or large multinational companies, what we find is today attention and focus is in great demand. Everyone needs our attention, and it's very difficult to give attention to everyone. So what it actually means for you, okay, as a teacher. I understand it's going to be very difficult, with a kind of a 9-hour or a 10-hour work schedule. How will you bring in attention to yourself? As adults, our attention span keeps getting reduced once we start to age. Okay, and this is mostly what we are seeing in our recent studies. Is even you take youngsters like 25, 30 who are coming to newly to the teaching profession. They're also seeing cognitive overload. Cognitive overload is in layman term multitasking. Like you have to dabble with many things, and you have to also teach. Okay, it's a very high pressure situation wherein you're answerable to the parents, you're answerable to the school management, and you're also answerable to your goals that you have in terms of your learning curriculum. So what does it mean? If how to kind of bring that focus back to you? when you know that we have to first accept that as when we grow into adults, and when we kind of become a bit older, what we need to understand is our attention focus will take a beating. And once we become aware of it, what we have seen is becoming aware of it is very, very, it's a crucial word. Once you know that your short span of attention is going to be the norm of the day, your brain will automatically start to pick up more focus. This is not magic, this is science. But how will you apply it in your classroom? Suppose your class period for your subject is say 45 minutes, okay, or 40 minutes. What you need to do is, uh, once you enter into your classroom, please give an activity or a kind of a game for first 5 to 10 minutes. I know it's kind of a tall claim, but you will see reaping benefits in terms of how much of memory recall and formation, the quality of memory recall and formation happens within your school children. So always do not straight away start the class as soon as you enter. Give a break, give them some activity so that they could jump, smile, kind of some kind of activity which is more focused, and then start your your learning session, teaching session. Then you would find a rapid, you can even do a study, you would see a rapid change in memory formation. Now coming to the next slide, which is the third slide, emotion drives learning. Emotion drives learning. I'll go back to your limbic system. Limbic system is where your emotions are getting stored. So when I'm talking to you, your limbic system constantly is trying to measure whether this a good emotion for me or a bad emotion for me. This is how the limbic system works. For example, a threatened student or a student who feels threatened in your classroom will never learn. So always remember that. So when you are entering a classroom, whichever mode we are in, today we have taken up our teaching as a profession. And once we take up something as a profession, we have to deal like how a doctor is or a pilot is, in terms of, once we get into that room, we become that. So let me give an example. Suppose you're a math teacher, because in India, math is considered, you always have some phobias for kids when it comes to mathematics. How you could link emotions with mathematics. So when you kind of do a math sum on the board, instead of asking them, have you understood? What you need to ask them is, how do you feel about this sum? Okay. Can you write which part of that sum that we worked out made you feel bad or good? Whether they understood, whether they like math or don't like math, at least once a week you need to give this kind of an exercise, because once they associate an emotion and tag a emotion word associated with their emotion to a math classroom, what the research says is their experience with you will qualitatively increase. Do not negate an emotion of a children. And same with you, when you kind of enter your school, everyone will rush, it's like traffic. Always kind of take a deep breath, because when you take a deep breath, your heart rate comes down. That's the science behind it. When your heart rate comes down, the brain starts to understand that it doesn't need to feel threatened. It is entering a safe work area. Okay. Now, moving to the next slide, in terms of how we retrieve and practice the memory formation. This is very, very interesting. You need to actually have, you need to strengthen the neural pathways. It's either by writing or learning, because the memory keeps dropping. I'm sure all of you would have seen the curve. The memory keeps dropping. If you learn something today, day after tomorrow, you might not remember. Because every night when you sleep, the brain tries to consolidate the memory, takes only what it needs, and when you wake up the next morning, whatever is not needed, it gets rejected by the system, or it gets pruned. Moving on, the next slide, in terms of multi-sensory learning, which is very, very important for adults. Okay, very, very important for adults even at this point of time. We are seeing growing instances of Alzheimer's, growing instances of Parkinson's. Okay, unfortunately in India, you should involve all your sensory, those five senses that nature has given us to form a memory. Some would be strong on grasping it visually, some by writing, but some by reading. But what you need to actually do is you need to have all the five sensory, at least four, if not five sensory. Um, I mean, really, even taste. Sometimes you could eat, and also eating a particular food could also help in retention of memory. So some teachers, when they kind of enter into a tough subject or a chapter, I've seen them giving chocolates, because that actually frees up the brain, and it helps the students to focus. As long as in terms of we stay relevant, this multi-sensory learning really enhances retention. Moving on, in terms of relevance, as teachers, you need to always have the intent to go and share something that you have learned, because you are the window to the children in your class. Because children are constantly trying to evaluate why they are in this world, what they are doing. Because until the frontal lobe is, you recall the first slide, until the frontal lobe is fully developed, they need someone who they could depend to in terms of their emotional relevance. So this is very, very important, and the same thing applies to you as well. Even when the front lobe is fully developed, you need to have some kind of someone who could help you in finding a relevance or a purpose to what you're actually doing. So last but not the least, in terms of the growth mindset, there was a beautiful research that was done on top 20 tennis players, and they wanted to understand what makes those first top 5 players different from the rest top 20 players. Is it the money they get? Is it the environment they work in, they play in? What is that? What does that actually makes those top 5 click? And the research findings were very, very interesting. It was neither the money nor the environment nor those media glare that they were given to, but how they loved their game. Okay, it's very, very important how they love tennis beyond all the other measures of success. So once you start to love what you do, your heart rate drops automatically, and time becomes very, very relative. And once your heart rate starts to drop, the signal automatically goes to the brain that this is a safe world, a safe place for me to learn. If that doesn't happen, the brain is always doing a constant assessment of its surroundings, saying whether am I in threat or not in threat. So always adapt this particular research, wherein you kind of understand that we need to love what we do. This is fundamental. When we do something which we don't love, that's where stress and toxicity happens. So with that, coming to the last slide, there is a video. I request Geetika to play. Yeah. So what I wanted to quickly tell you is, kids and even adults, we mimic each other. That's why we ape each other. So we have to, as teachers or as parents, how you deal with others, how you respect others, how you talk to others. The kids in your classroom are watching, and similarly, you are watching others. Your seniors in your school, how they deal with it. So I just end my speech with this particular video.
अरे पापा रेड सिग्नल था। अरे हम ब्रेक है यार। सॉरी बेटा सॉरी। नहीं पापा आया। अरे नहीं देख कोई हवलदार है क्या? नहीं पापा कोई हवलदार तो नहीं है। गुड मॉर्निंग सर। हाँ बोला। सर मैंने वो चर्च गेट पे सिग्नल तोड़ा तो वो फाइन भरनी है सर। उधर हवलदार नहीं था, इधर किस लिए आया? नहीं सर वहाँ कोई हवलदार नहीं था। वहाँ हवलदार नहीं था तो सीधा निकल जाता है, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? किसी ने देखा नहीं ना तेरे को? देखा ना सर। किसने देखा? मेरे बेटे ने देखा ना। तो देखेगा वही सीखेगा ना।
Thank you, Geetika. And This is something which I wanted to share with you, and hope this was useful to all of you.
Thank you so much, Srinivas. I think the video was very powerful in the end. There are a lot of people present in the audience, including me, who have designed experiences for teachers and children. And these principles are something that we will definitely go back to whenever we are designing these experiences for teachers. So, thank you for sharing these guidelines, these principles that are important for us to create a great experience for our teachers. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Geet. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
With that, we are moving to the last part of our day today. I'm going to invite two very close people who have had the privilege of working from the last 3 years. Firstly, I would like to invite Chandni. Chandni is the co-founder and chief program officer at Simple Education Foundation. She has led many large-scale teacher development initiatives across multiple states in India, impacting over 120,000 teachers and 1,000 teacher coaches. She began her journey at SEF as a school leader, developing the partner school program to test innovative teaching practices and strengthen the school ecosystem in collaboration with the government. Her leadership in education has been recognized on platforms such as Brookings, TEDx, and India Today, and I've seen it firsthand. In addition to her work at SEF, Chandni co-founded the Khel Khel Mein Foundation, which promotes sports in underserved communities. Before her times at SEF, she's also served as a program manager at Teach for India. She holds a degree in business economics and public policy from Indiana University Kelley School of Business. Welcome, Chandni, and we're excited to hear from you. And second with us is Shehnaz. I had again the privilege of working with her every day. She is a training and design expert with 6 years of experience in the field. She has worked with diverse stakeholders in both rural and urban contexts, and she currently leads the design and implementation of state transformation program in Delhi at SEF. She has experience in designing human-centered training modules, resources, and even toolkits at scale programs. Welcome, Chani, and welcome, Shehnaz. I'm very excited for people to hear about the work that has been you both have been doing in the last 3 years.
And you, Ritika, and you. So thank you so much for the introduction. It feels like I meet the entire Eduverse conference community every evening, the last session of the day. But good, thank you all for just being with us for the past few hours and engaging so consistently. The fact that there are more than 100 of us still here at the end of the evening, and I know I'm keeping you from dinner, but I promise that this will be just an exciting and engaging session. I'll quickly start us off. I really wanted to have this interaction deeply with Shehnaz and discover what it is that in-service has worked for us. And today, when I was hearing all the speakers, just a couple of things that have been standing out to me, especially, have been I connect back to Subir's keynote about what would it mean for governments to just ask teachers what do they want for their teacher training, for their teacher professional development, and what would it mean for us to think of teacher professional development very differently from the way we do now. And there were a lot of hows he had shared in his talk as well. And today I'm really excited, Shehnaz, to really hear into the case studies from you about the work that we have tried to do at Simple Education Foundation with the in-service work that we're doing and our attempts to bring that teacher agency and that teacher voice. So we'll be deep diving into two cases where we really try to integrate that in our own ways. And we would love to hear questions and feedback and ideas from you all in the chat. But what we really wanted to think about, and these case studies will go deeply into what it means to do a strong needs analysis with teachers at a state level, and what does it mean to decentralize or take teacher professional development into the teachers arena, into classrooms. And those are the kind of innovations that we have been trying to work on in our in-service programs. But yeah, I think what I would really like us to anchor on is that one key question, and I'm sure, and as we'll go through slides and the details, but the thing that we really wanted to question is that who is the teacher professional development for, and who is the user of the teacher professional development? I think Gaurav, in his talk, he talked a lot about the teacher as the user. And Subir also spoke about what is the government's responsibility, or how can governments or any kind of teacher professional development practitioners, what are the questions they should ask teachers? How should they include teachers' voice, teachers' agency into the conversation? And that's really where we started off. And those are the kind of things we questioned, we asked ourselves, and with the backbone of that well-being and that core value of just basic respect that Gayatri spoke about, I think, in the session just right before that. How do you take that respect and that acknowledgement and include teachers into what they want and hear from them? And that's really where all of these ideas originated from. And Shahnaz, I would just, when I think of you and working with you over the past, year or so, I think I have learned this from you. Whenever, and I've seen Shahnaz conduct at least, I think she must have conducted at least 100 focus group discussions with teachers, or gone to classroom with mentor teachers, with district coordinators, with teachers one-on-one, going into classrooms, going into different training spaces. And not only has she done that in Delhi, she's done that in Delhi, Punjab, and Haryana, and doing this across states. And sometimes I'm just, what keeps you going? Because to be this person who's designing deeply, has to be training at this large scale, and then just be this deep empathetic listener. And I've always seen you just deeply listen into teacher needs, and design from that space and respond to that. So before we get into the case studies, I wanted to just celebrate you and ask you, what is it that keeps that empathy going? What is it that helps you put teachers front and center, give teachers that agency, and make their voice heard in their professional development?
Thank you, Chandni. Thank you for that lovely introduction and asking me this very beautiful question. I think today I've also come from a training space that I attended, and I met a lot of teachers, spoke to a lot of them. So this question, I think, is quite easy for me to answer, because it's not really complicated. It's very simple. I think at the core of everything is this core belief that every teacher cares very deeply about children. Every teacher wants to do their best. They want to, engage that student who has not been listening for a while. They want to ensure that, oh, why is that child who's not been in school for the past 2 weeks, are they not coming? They want to know, oh, there are 60 students in my classroom, what do I do? Because they are always asking these questions. And all you have to do is just listen. So I think that it's just simply about knowing at heart that every teacher has the best interest of the child and is giving their best. That makes listening is very easy. It's not really that complicated, because even when a teacher is actually complaining maybe about, oh, there's so many administrative tasks, there's this, there's that, they're doing so because they do want to spend more time in the classroom. They do want to do the things. They do want to have like an engaging, fun classroom. They enjoy it. That's why they say what they say. So yeah, I think that's my core belief. So yeah.
And I know I experience it every day, and I'm so glad we get to present this to all these wonderful people here today. I just see you operating with that and representing their voice and believing that they really, like, that belief for children, that belief for teachers. You definitely have that as one of their multiple coaches that they have. And we just love to deep dive into the case studies. So just inviting the audience as well, as we're going through the case studies of how we have endeavored to be in service of teachers, would love to keep this stream of consciousness in the comment section alive about ideas, what's resonating with you, any questions you have. Because in each case, after each case study, I will be pausing to ask Shena's questions, or ask your, or like give her your feedback and share your ideas. And then we'll just deep dive in. So the first real initiative we started with was the teacher needs analysis, right? And Shenaz, if you want to just take us through that, we can begin.
Yeah. I think the fundamental question that comes is that when every teacher professional development program is towards enabling a teacher to do X, Y, Z, we are lagging behind in foundational literacy, we need to do this, we need to do that. One question that we keep asking is that, do teachers have agency over what kind of a professional development they receive? Do they know? It's not just about what is the content of the training, how is it that they are receiving that training, what is it that the training is talking about, what is it helpful, is it not helpful? So I think it's something that I'd want everyone to think about, that how often do we ask the teacher, what is it that do you need, what is it that is going to help you, what is it that can support you, right? And I think I'd want to share just what the journey of SEF has been in terms of how can we integrate the voice of teachers in a teacher professional development program. So the journey really starts in 2021. So 2021, when we started working with the state government, everyone had a different idea. And they were all well-meaning ideas, because these are all like the Indian education system being as complex as it is, as large as it is, we have different areas where we do need support, right? Whether it's foundational literacy, whether it's 21st century skills, whether it's, some new policy has come in, or whether it's about, how can our children do better STEM, how can they do arts? So everyone comes with a new idea of, maybe they need to know more about these math techniques, they need to know more about what is written in that document, or they need to know about some storytelling activities. So everyone comes with these diverse ideas, and they are all very beautiful ideas. But sometimes when we are trying to design those interventions, it becomes really challenging to then say, is this really what teachers want? Because we did not ask the teacher. So finally, when we asked them, okay, so like when we moved on, when we started working more closely with the government, we suggested, why don't we ask, what do you need? What can enable you? What is the support that you are seeking? And the responses were actually very, very beautiful. Everyone wanted to know, okay, how, like there are some examples on your screen, but were 10,000 responses to what a teacher wanted. And each of them very unique, but you could see a similar pattern. Okay, how do I include more children in my classroom? How do I create that safe space? How do I use technology? What are these policies? What are the benefits? I'm a new teacher. There are different kinds of trainings that are happening. When a new teacher is joining, they want to know, okay, what is there? What are my roles and responsibilities? How do I do X? How do I do Y? Right? And these are very unique things that give you that perspective of, okay, this should be part of the training. These are things that even the government stakeholders know that, okay, this is something that I also needed when I was a teacher. But when they step out of that space, that sometimes goes missing. So it gave we conducted multiple surveys, we conducted focus group discussions. So we got to know, okay, this year this is what is more meaningful to them. They want to know about the policy, they want to know, these are new teachers, they want to know what all already exists, they want to know how to create an inclusive classroom. So we decided that that's the kind of training that we will give. It doesn't have to be based on just one idea. It can be multiple, and we can provide what the teacher is asking. So we continue to ask these questions, and in different forms, because it's not always easy to access so many teachers and understand their needs. So conducting just focus group discussions, going into the classrooms, seeing and asking, okay, why is this challenging to you? Is this helpful to you? And also asking people who are more on ground, right? I think as a lot of times when we are working in large scale systems, we are not really spending that much time on ground, but that doesn't mean that nobody else is. There are so many people who are directly working as mentors, they are principals, they are the people who know what's going on in their classrooms, what is the teacher complaining to them about, what is something that they are feeling like, oh, I need more of this, right? I think in 2023, for example, I'd say that when everyone asked us, when we did our survey, like 95% teachers wanted training on 21st century skills. And when we conducted our focus group discussions, we asked a simple question, that what do you understand by 21st century skills? And everyone had a very different idea. They all thought that, oh, this is a really interesting sounding topic. So all of us have chosen it, but everyone thinks, oh, it's technology. It's the use of internet, something, okay, it's critical thinking, it's collaboration. So I think asking them what they need and using just all of this data really helps you understand, not just you don't design an intervention around one idea, right? You do need clarity about what is going to go into it. If you are going to design a training session, what is going to go into that? So I think those parts have been really, really beautiful. And since it becomes limiting to just use these ways to find out what is it that's going to work for teachers, the final step that we have really stopped at is how can we co-create with teachers? How can because they know better what is going on ground. They know what will work in their classrooms. So bringing that teacher voice into teacher professional development program for me, and I think what our journey at SCF has also been, is a lot about just co-creation. Let's do it together. Let us bring in what we can. You tell us whether it will work. You tell us what has worked for you. What can we do more of? So I think that's how our journey has been. And finally, the real impact of it is that from our first conversation in 2021 to now, by 2023, nobody said ki, okay, what kind of training do we have to do? They said, let's present what has come out of the need analysis, and then let's talk about it. Which training should go ahead. And to today, when it's completely institutionalized, it's something that the government is doing by themselves. Nobody is, every right now trainings are decentralized, and every small district is conducting their own need analysis before they design their training. It is a mandate by the government. So I think that is the true success, because that makes it sustainable. It's not just I who's asking. Now the government is asking, what do you want? Right. And that is what has led to just I always see, okay, there is data. Data is telling us that our trainings are they've become highly relevant. If 91.53% teachers find it relevant, it is something that they are, liking. But more than that, when you go into those spaces, you actually see people enjoying their trainings. It's more about, how they're feeling in that space. They're not being like, oh, 3 baj gaye, it's 3 o'clock, let me leave, we don't want to be here anymore. I'm constantly, even today, been seeing teachers who are staying back, wanting to talk more, because today we spoke about stress management and mental well-being, because that's what they needed. Yesterday, I saw a 56-year-old man make a Google form for the first time, because that's what they wanted. And that's what's helping them. And that's what we chose to, design our training on. So, yeah, I think just the power of that need analysis is just so strong that, yeah.
Shanaz, there's something coming to my mind before we even go forward with the questions. And so I would invite everyone on chat to also ask their questions, their ideas, comments on this. But before anyone asks, I know I have first right over here. I'm on the screen, so I'll ask you the first question. I think one of the things that you were sharing that stood out so powerfully to me was just a very simple statement. Just ask. When that you spoke that when we entered, and there are a lot of these decision makers and well-meaning intentions, everything saying that teachers need this, teachers need this, teachers need this, and then like just somebody asking, okay, but what are teachers saying they need, or have we asked teachers, or what would they say anything different in what you're saying, or how do you make that just make that suggestion invitational, or just say let's ask teachers. And it's something so simple. It reminded me of something that even Subir said in the first session today. It's sometimes not the simplest things matter most, or it's the simplest or the easiest things to do, and they don't even occur to us. So we leave them for the end. But just asking teachers what they want, and I can see the rapid ripples it's made and the shifts it's made to institutionalization. So, what do you think were barriers to that initially? And once that has happened, what are other unintentional shifts also? Because one is teacher voice is being heard, but I also know that a lot of other things have started to happen, a lot of other dominoes in action, because we're just listening to teachers more, or we're catering to their needs, or we're making it relevant to them. What's shifted? So what was the limitation, and what kind of powerful shifts have happened? And while Shanaz answers that, would love to hear more questions coming in the chat.
Yeah. I think the first challenge, I think I would say, is just like initially when we bring across just both quantitative and qualitative data into a space, there's a lot of question of how important is it even, how significant is this even, and just like there's always a constant fight of, oh, but I believe this is also important, and which is true. It's not always to say ki maybe talking about a new policy, is it not important? It is important. It's a lot future forward. So I think the initial struggle was to see how much of teacher voice could we integrate, and how could we ensure that there are certain mandates that need to happen. There are certain things that need to be talked about. There are certain things that are in play and are very important for teachers to also know, and maybe that's not what they intentionally chose, right? But I think so one was just finding that balance, that how do we balance both of what is being asked by the teacher and what as education is shifting in our country with the new education policy, now the national curriculum framework, things are shifting, changes are happening. So how are you bringing that in? But and I think one thing that makes it also work is that even when you bring in things that teachers might feel like, oh, but I know this, but what is it that you can innovate in it, right? What if is it the challenges that is it do they want to know more about the challenges? Shall we talk about them, or shall we talk about something else, right? So just that depth is something that I think is important to put into our designs.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about like the other ripple effects of doing
Yeah.
this need analysis and integrating teachers? What do you
Yeah.
think that has enabled, like any other things that it has enabled
Mhm.
for government systems, maybe?
I think something that I have seen, I think in the recent past itself, is that just in terms of just the kind of or the quality of trainings that they design, and what this after we hear back the feedback from different teachers about how was their experience. Like say for today, we conducted a 3-day training, and the most impactful of out of all of them is everyone that people are talking about the use of AI, use of Google Forms, well-being, and these things become more and more important. And we talked about how important well-being is, and for it to take center stage, this data point is what is bringing it up, right? And now all institutions are starting to believe, and I'm sure they believed it in the beginning, but now they are also taking active efforts to, okay, this is the concern of the teachers, we must do something about it. That's how I think small shifts can happen, right? So just the government has now allocated budget for conducting need analysis, right?
Wow,
uh,
huge
so
shift.
yeah, they have directed every training to have a need analysis. It's part of the process that happens. It's the SOP that has been given. So e- different people might have different ideas of how to conduct a need analysis, but they know they have to ask, right? That
Yeah.
simple aspect. And they may ask in different ways, but they know now that they have to ask, and that they will be held accountable to it as well. So I
Yeah.
think that institutionalization is the biggest shift for me. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I think we'll keep looking at more questions as we go
Yeah.
along, but I wanted to deep dive into also how you're taking the second case quickly about
Yeah.
how where one is just this need analysis and the journey it's taken. And a lot of
Yeah.
folks are also sharing that, the teachers have one is the content training needs, but they also have needs of like the balance, like their well-being of non-teaching tasks, and the balance of that, and how do you ensure that they're not forced into it. And I think that's
Yeah.
something we can also think about at the end.
Yeah.
But would love to also go into the demonstration
Yeah.
case study and really think about how that
Yeah.
journey also looked for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think something that we also just heard directly from the teachers was that, oh, you are telling us to do XYZ, but I don't know what it looks like in a classroom, right? I don't know how am I going to manage it straight into the classroom. And when everyone thinks about a teacher professional development, they think, oh, it's a training where there is a trainer and then there are teachers. That is where you will tell them, that is where you will conduct activities, and then teachers will go back into their classroom and implement them, right? But it doesn't have to be that way, right? If a teacher wants to see it in their classroom, can we not bring that teacher professional development into the classroom? So one of the significant challenges we faced of last year was that this is what we had this training which was going really well. Everyone was loving it. And they also want, and each time we visited they wanted to see, oh, it's very innovative, but we don't know how it will go. And at the same time there are so many teachers who we want this this idea to reach, who we want these strategies to reach, but it takes so much time to bring them into a room get book that venue, ensure everything is happening. It takes 3 weeks to train 4,000 teachers, and that's also a lot of teachers at once. But we do have 35,000 more teachers. So the solution that we got is, why not train one teacher from each school and ask them to do a classroom demonstration of what they have learned, right? We gathered all of these teachers. From 1,000 schools, we called 1,000 teachers. They took the training and they had to deliver that in the classroom. It was it was an institutional mandate to go into the school, invite all the other teachers into their classroom and demonstrate it, do it with the children, right? Because everyone wants that evidence that this works, this can happen in my classroom. I have 60 children, it'll still work, right? So that is one of the approaches we did. We did a classroom demonstration directly. And secondly, what we did, this is a simple thing that we can do every time there's a training. We try to show something from a foreign country, and everyone says, how can this happen in my classroom, right? Where is that resource that we have? And that's what we did. We just went and recorded the teacher conducting the activity in the classroom, ensured that we have children and teachers from their own state in those videos, so that they can see, hey, look, this is how it can be done, this is how she's doing it. It's not in English.
Powerful, Shanaz,
Yeah.
like just having that kind of not looking outside for a role model, but a teacher who teaches in your state, in a government school like you, probably in a similar classroom, and like a peer being a role model, and demonstration classrooms from them. It just changes that entire power structure as well, right? That I can learn from my peers, and my peers are excellent resources for learning, growing, innovating. Just find that and that repository piece very powerful, and taking it into the classroom. And the idea that teacher training, or even what people were speaking about before, like taking teachers out of the classroom, again, out of the classroom to do training.
Yeah.
Again, that's a crunch of time. Like, again, they're losing learning time with children. How does it mean for us to go into their classrooms and support over there? Because that's when it would be relevant and meaningful. So these points were just absolutely incredible. Please share more.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think that's the kind of response we also got from them. That it was time saving, and I think it's been 2 years since these trainings, and we were doing a research study on how how have these strategies actually reached the classroom, how is it going? And it's not written here, but I'd just like to share that I've gone to multiple classrooms. I've asked teachers, have you used any of these strategies? Are you doing this? And mentors who oversee classrooms, and they've all mentioned that yes, we know this. Yes, we are doing this. Yes, this is where we are facing challenges. For someone to retain something from 2 years ago that they received for just 45 minutes, 70 minutes, it's very powerful, because it has stayed. It went into their classroom. They saw it. People talked about it. People continued to talk about it, and they still do. Right. Something that I was sharing with my colleague the other day was that it's so wonderful that I was sitting in that room, not talking about the training that we did, but everyone in that room was talking about, oh, you remember this strategy? This is how we should do it. It was like their own. Right. So it was just so wonderful to see that with organizations like ours, it's always like, oh, they brought some strategy into our classroom. How well is it going? I remember this person came and whatever, but the shift that I was able to see was that they talked about it like their own, because we weren't there. It was their teacher who was there in that classroom. Did the demonstration.
Oh, this is the jigsaw strategy. इसको हम ऐसे भी कर सकते हैं, or let's build on it. So I've heard that as well, like just that true ownership that this is mine.
Yeah.
This is not something that somebody gave me, but or the ownership they feel to even build on it, innovate, and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, maybe I can do it this way."
Yeah.
I think that they'll be recognized and appreciated for it instead of it being
Yeah.
prescribed. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. You know that I just love, in practice demonstrations and all. It's something very close to my heart. And I know we're getting some questions coming in, so we'll take one or two questions. If anybody else has any questions, please keep them rolling in. There's one question from Samir. He's asking, have you seen any shift in the participation and nature of engagement by teachers during trainings, especially
Yeah.
when their needs are used to design? So, what really shifts in their engagement, like their participation? What have you observed? What have you seen?
I think I've seen massive shifts, is what I'd like to say.
Share a
Because,
story or two. I think that would connect with us more. Yeah.
yeah. So, I think the most recent stories are what comes to my mind right now because they're just so fresh. So when I was sitting with this teacher, there was a session just on where teachers were just taken through how to make a form, a Google form, and everyone was making a form about okay, how will they collect data in their classroom, how will they maybe take a test. They were innovating within it, and when I was having a conversation, it was just lunchtime, and something I say is that if somebody is talking about your session during lunchtime, it means it was successful. Everyone wants to escape during lunchtime, but everyone was talking about, oh, yeah, they were like, this is something I've been wanting to know. We've been filling forms all these years. Every day we have to fill 10,000 forms, but we don't know how to make one. And
Wow.
so that's what, like, the full session was so engaging because they had to do it and it's what they wanted, and they learned from it. And everyone shares that today, this morning, someone shared that when we came in day one, we were like, oh, same old. But as the day started, we were like, okay, we are experiencing something different. We learned a new pedagogical strategy. Oh, we know, this is something that I think will really work. I've been having those challenges, and I think you can easily tell when they actually share real life challenges during the class. I mean, during the session, when they talk and connect, and they are talking about authentic problems. If they are actually talking about their problems and solutions during that session, it means that it was relevant for them. It means that they're taking away something from that space. So yeah, I think overall I have seen so much.
Take the last question
Yes.
from Reshma. She's asking, and then we'll move to the closing and networking
Yeah.
space. But Reshma is asking, what if we don't get the platform for implementing what we've learned or gotten trained on? So, you receive the training, but you don't really get to practice it. Yeah. And first of all, Reshma, that should not happen. And like, we should always get the opportunity to practice what we've been trained on. That's the purpose of it. But Shanaz, I'll leave you to this question because this is a reality for a lot of teachers that maybe the training is disconnected from the realities of the classroom or they don't have their autonomy. What can we do in that case?
I think like the first part, I resonate with the idea that I don't think it should happen, that you should not, you got a training on something that you could not implement. I think there's also something to examine there as to what is it that is being asked of. But something that I'd say is that, and I've seen, is that as a population, there are so many ways to implement something. Like, as we've been innovating inside, outside classrooms. So, if it doesn't work in my classroom, is it working in someone else's classroom? Is a question that I'd say. Is it happening somewhere else? If not, what can we adapt out of it? I've been told something, but there is maybe an essence of, that idea. Everyone is talking about experiential education, but okay, there are these limitations. I can't try this out exactly, but I don't think there would ever be that there is not an essence that I can't bring in, that there isn't something that I can adapt to it. Like, I know that it becomes challenging when somebody says, okay, how do we use tech? um, our students don't have those that technology with
Yeah.
them, right? And that's very fair. Then what can you use out of that technology? That is bare minimum. It's about, okay, the idea of using technology. If they told you, okay, this exact technology, doesn't have to be, right? Something made somebody's life simpler in some strategy, great. But it's technology that made it easier. So maybe there's something that will work for when children don't have tabs in their classroom. Maybe there is some other source that I can use. Maybe there's something that children can do when they go back home because their parents have phones. So I think it's just about finding that way to adapt. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Anaz. And I mean, I can keep listening to you, and I know I will be because I'm meeting you tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
But thank you all for just joining us. And Samir, if you like, please do join. We are going to have a networking space where we get to interact with some of us right after this on Zoom. So we're happy to share any resources, anything you need. More than happy to share that. And I'll invite Ellie back to just close the conference for today, and maybe we will see you all in person in the networking space.
Thank you so much, Chandni and Shahnaz, for sharing those wonderful case studies. Like a lot of examples, actually, what needs to be done. Successful case study initiatives, TPD initiatives, how listening to teachers is important. And I think that came up as a thread in multiple sessions today, and how teachers can be empowered to learn from each other. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, dear teachers. I know it's been a really long time, good 3 hours after your work time. But thank you so much for staying with us for all this time and then listening to our wonderful speakers. Today we learned with Subir in the beginning that how he shared how to envision teachers. We need to envision students first, what they need, understand what teachers actually need and listen to them more. Taylor spoke about why we need schools and how we can show empathy towards building student leadership. Then Gaurav spoke about how educators can make use of technology and AI to facilitate excellent learning to our students. After which moved a little bit to well-being. Gayatri shared about how we can develop a teacher well-being framework if needed and giving agency to teachers. How can even teachers take ownership of their own well-being? Then Srinivas said the science behind all of those things, right? How do adults learn and how our brain has the capacity to adapt and learn at any age. And us having a shorter learning span, what does that mean? How can we ensure that all of us learn really well with that? And how emotions drive our learning. How can we make use of all of this information while we define teacher professional development spaces for our educators? Chandni and Shainas close the space by sharing case studies of two successful TPD initiatives about how listening to other teachers are important and how teachers can be empowered to learn from each other. So I was closing out our in-service day. Tomorrow it's going to be the last day of the conference, and we would love to see all of you back again here. Tomorrow, day 3 of Eduverse, we promise to be an inspiring exploration of school leadership and its transformative role in education. So we'll be focusing a lot on school leadership aspect. The day will kick off with a keynote address by a renowned principal from Finland, setting the tone for a deep dive into the power of visionary leadership. Attendees will then hear innovation stories from some school leaders and NGOs highlighting how effective leadership fosters teacher professional development and that can drive meaningful change. Then there will be a panel discussion which will unravel some best practices in TPD while focusing on sessions that can be created towards creating good culture of teacher well-being and harnessing data for goal setting. So it's a day designed to empower all leaders to be continuous learners and catalysts for growth in their schools. Looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Before we close out, like yesterday, we would like to invite you to a networking space now for our next 15 to 20 minutes. If you're interested in talking to each other about what you learned, I would love to request you to join the Zoom link that's put on the YouTube chat for our Chai Pe Charcha space. Looking forward to seeing you, all of you, on the Zoom link, and definitely all of you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. See you tomorrow.